All right. Welcome everyone holding by the Book of Leviticus Chapter 15. Again, I want to welcome everyone holding by the Book of Leviticus Chapter 15. Spoke last week about Nida. Again, we're going to keep this conversation clean about family purity laws. And we'll probably speak a little bit more about that as we go. So again, I want to welcome everyone holding by the Book of Leviticus Chapter 15, verse 20. Again, holding by the Book of Leviticus, chapter 15, verse 20. So the Torah tells me, Kosher Tishkav, Allah ben Nidoso, Yitma Kosher Teshev Alav Yitma. So the Torah tells me, we saw before that a woman who has a discharge, right, and she sees blood, then stage of separation for a 7-day period. Anyone touches her shall remain impure. Anything she sits on, anything she touches, right, at least in the time when the temple existed, will become impure. Verse 20, anything upon which she may recline, right, anything which she may lie on, her state of separation shall become impure. Anything upon which she sits shall become impure as well. So we see clear, even though this doesn't, this aspects of the laws of Nida do not apply, right? They will not apply today. Regardless, there is a separation, right? Between husband and wife, there will be a separation. There needs to be at least a 5-day waiting period. Usually it's about a 7-day waiting period. And then once she doesn't see blood for 7 straight days, then she goes to the mikveh and everything's good. Question would be, what happens if she sees blood, right, during that time, even a drop of blood, or even let's say, questionable color, right? We mentioned this, last week. People will say, oh, that's gross. What? I had to show my underwear to the rabbi, this, that. Well, it's a pretty serious prohibition, right? Being with a woman, your wife, even if she has, if she hasn't gone to the mikveh, it's a pretty serious thing, right? We're gonna see how far it goes. But most people today, certainly in the secular world and the secular Jewish world, come from this union, right? Where the mother, did not go to the mikveh. So there are a lot of ramifications. Mostly have to do with bad character traits, right? And being born of such a union. Now, again, a lot of things, as we're mentioning here, will not apply, right? They won't apply because we don't have a temple in Jerusalem today. So we're all basically in the state of impurity anyway. But she's got an extra level of impurity, right? She got an extra level of impurity. Now, it doesn't mean, even though the Torah says, what she sits on becomes impure. What she touches becomes impure. It would seem like, back in the day, woman, when she got a period, she would like be in her own house almost. Anything she touches becomes impure, right? Whatever she sits on. So, that doesn't apply. Obviously, it doesn't apply today, even though, I've had people, say in the past, this is what we should go back to. This is the way, life should be. You're right. It is the way life should be, but it's not. We don't have a temple today. We're certainly not anywhere close, to building a temple today. So it doesn't apply, right? There are things that the Torah says, we mentioned many times. There are things that the Torah brings down that, because of us, because of our own sins, they don't apply, right? They don't apply. It doesn't mean that they weren't supposed to be forever, right? The temple was supposed to be forever. I mean, obviously God understood, God knew that if we sin and we do the wrong thing, what's going to happen? It'll get destroyed, right? Essentially get destroyed. God knew that. God saw that, from the beginning, just like by the creation, the beginning of creation of man. God understood. He gave man one command, right? The one command is don't eat from the tree of knowledge. Whatever you do, don't eat from the tree of knowledge. And they sinned. Adam and Eve ate from the tree. Unbelievable repercussions, right? Brought death to the world. Death is not a Jewish concept. Never has been. Never will be. But okay, there's a reality. So what's the reality over here? The reality is that you do X, God has to go to plan B, maybe plan C. But God foresaw that. That doesn't mean we don't have free will. Man absolutely had free will over here. So there are repercussions. And there are serious repercussions over here by being with a woman during that time where she doesn't go to the mikvah. Right? Very, very serious repercussions. So again, even though some of these things will not apply, right? Because over here, what does the Torah tell me? Leviticus chapter 15, verse 20, anything which a woman may recline on in her state of separation, she's impure. Anything she sits on becomes impure. Very good. So what do I understand? I understand that that's the way it was when the temple existed. That's the way it was. There are different levels of laws of purity and impurity. Now, even though today someone will say, come on, we're in a natural state of impurity, right? We can't fix anything up today. Person comes in contact with a dead body. Even when you went to the mikveh, you snorkel there for a month, right? Play with your rubber ducky, cannonballs all over the place, right? So you had a good time in the mikveh. Doesn't help. You're still in a level of impurity. So tell me, so what does Kohen do? Right here in Israel, Kohen blesses the congregation every day. So if he comes in contact with a dead body, not on purpose, is he allowed to bless the congregation? Yes. Does he lose the state of being a Kohen? No, at least not in this case. Right? Okay, we don't want, a Kohen has a certain pedigree. That pedigree, we don't want to add to impurity. We don't want to add on to this level of impurity. So what about us? What about everybody else? So we can't. Why? Because we're not a Kohen. So we come in contact with dead bodies. We go to funerals, different things, right? We have a level of impurity, or maybe high level of impurity. So does that mean a person goes to a cemetery? They go to a cemetery. Does that mean that they have to go to the mikveh afterwards? No. Normally you wash your hands afterwards, right? But you don't have to go to the mikveh. Going to the mikveh is not going to help. Right? So we don't go to the mikveh. So why don't we do it anyway? Why don't we do it to maybe, just to get in a better state of purity? We're all in a state of impurity. Now, the only thing is, by a woman, after all those clean days, and then she goes to the mikveh, so her status changes. Now, that's a novelty over here because that shouldn't happen. Right? In general, it shouldn't happen. Why? Because if we don't have a temple today, so why should her status change? And the reality is the status changes anyway. She doesn't have to bring a sacrifice, not dependent whether the temple exists or not. So as we mentioned before, she's going to have a certain waiting period, right? Either 5 days to 7 days. When she stops seeing blood, then she's going to have to wait another 7 days, another 7 clean days where there's no discharge, or even if there is a discharge, right? Hopefully it should be clean. It won't interfere. Maybe it will. And then you have to start counting again. I mean, she could spot, let's say, a woman's on the pill or whatever the case is. A woman can certainly spot. That could happen. So you have to start counting again, right? Even let's say she's ready to go to the mikveh, doesn't matter. Right? Even if it would be that night, she spots, she has to wait another 7 days. Right? Another 7 clean days. It uproots everything. So whatever, there are detailed laws here. I don't want to go into so many of the laws here, but the point is that whatever she sits on, in this case, going to be impure. Right? That's going to be the case. Right? She will be impure. Whatever she touches, semen will be impure. And the argument which we mentioned before is people will say, and certainly doctors will be the first to say, come on, this is a natural series of events. This is what goes on. We saw last week, this is the curse of Eve. This is exactly what happened. Right? She has to go through difficulty in childbirth, difficulty raising children. It's part of the curse of eating from the tree. And the other curse is this. There's a monthly cycle. There's another curse. It's all part of this. So you say, but I don't understand. This is a natural thing. This is what happens. You're right. This is biology 101A, 101A, 101B, C, D, E, and F, whatever you want to call it. It's a natural thing. You're right. But the laws of impurities, it doesn't matter what's natural, what's not natural. right? It doesn't really matter, right? 100% is going to be irrelevant, over here. There's a status. There's a status over here. You like it, you don't like it, there's a status. It's laws of purity and impurity. Now, at the end of the day, we have to, we have to try and understand it, to the best of our ability. But again, science is going to tell you, and doctors will tell you, I don't get it. We'll call it, for lack of a better term, Kaufman's term, spiritual cooties. That's what it is, right? You don't have to fully understand. This is what God says, right? A man has a seminal emission. This is what happens to him. A woman, this is what happens to her, right? We're going to see the difference between a zav, someone has a discharge, and a woman, gets a period. So what if a woman has a discharge? Certainly not at the time of a period. So, it's going to be, she's going to have a different status. She's going to have a different status over here, which we're going to have to see. All right. But in general, whatever she sat on, whatever she touched, that's it, becomes impure. Right? Becomes impure. Now, whether it exists or not today, it doesn't matter. Right? We're not going back to that right now until the temple, till we have a temple, till it's rebuilt, till the Messiah comes. We're not going back to that. Right? People can jump up and down, yell and scream. Not going to help. Right? And, I've had a number of people say this. Let's go back to Torah law. So there are certain things we don't have Torah law. Right? Doesn't exist for a number of reasons. Give one example. Besides laws of purity and impurity here, the laws of judges. Person comes to a rabbinical court, comes to a beis din. Reuven has a grievance against Shimon. Shimon caused Reuven damage. Let's say Reuven takes him to beis din, takes him to the rabbinical court in order, he wants his money, right? Either Shimon owes the money, caused damage. You have to see what the beis din's going to say over here, what the rabbinical court's going to say. But there are certain things the rabbinical court cannot judge. One of them is, let's say there was a fine. There are certain things that if a person did something, they're liable for a fine. Now, fines, rabbinical courts today cannot judge. They can't judge. Why not? Because there were certain things that they're only be allowed to judge if they had rabbinic ordination, from the time of the temple. If someone had that type of rabbinic ordination, very good, then you could judge it. Then you could judge cases of death penalty, right? If there was a case of a death penalty. Or other cases. We don't have that today, right? Today there's what would we call it? They're like messengers. They're messengers over here. They're not doing 100% Torah law. So you're going to say, okay, someone comes to a rabbinical court. Well, someone caused damage. So what do they do? What do they do? It's not called Torah law over here because there's no such thing. Doesn't exist today. And the reason is very simple, again, because there are certain things that needs rabbinic ordination, like it was done in the time of second temple. Right? In the time of the first temple. We don't have anyone who's got rabbinic ordination today like that. We don't have anybody. So you can't judge these type of cases. So what happens if the rabbinical court sees, right, the beis din over here sees it's going to lead to this? It's going to lead to a fine. It's going to lead to maybe, judgment by death, maybe death penalty. They will not judge it. Today's death penalty doesn't exist anyway, but they're not going to judge it. They will not judge that aspect of the case because they don't have the ability to do so. So, okay, so now the $1 million question. So what is it? So what is their judgment called? Their judgment is called Pshara Karov Ladin. Pshara Karov Ladin means they make a compromise, which is close to law. So they can say, what? It's not real law. It's law. Right? They call it the way they see it, according to Jewish law. Now that means that someone comes to a rabbinical court, two Jews, and they have a grievance, they have to sign a document saying whatever the rabbinical court says, whatever the beis din says, that's what they're gonna do. Right? Then they have to accept it. So they lift up, something, they lift up a towel, or they lift up a pen, they lift up someone's hat, whatever it is, in order to show they're accepting what the rabbinical court says. So now, you're sitting in a rabbinical court for 5 years, see all kinds of things. So all kinds of things that came in, and only once, actually more than once. I had a few times. A few times someone would come in and they would say, honorable rabbis, we want judgment according to Torah law. None of this compromise, none of this other stuff. We want Torah law. We want Torah law. So all the rabbis started to laugh. They all started to laugh. They all started to laugh. Why? They started to laugh for one very simple reason. Right? They laughed over here because, they laughed, in this case, because someone comes in front of a rabbinical court and someone says, you know what? We want law. We want 100% law. Well, what's the problem? There is no 100% law today. It's all pure. It's all compromise, right? They can't do 100% law. They don't have the same rabbinical ordination as at the time of the Second Temple. So therefore, if it doesn't exist, how can they do 100% law? They can't, right? It only happened a few times, over a 5-year period. That people say, we want Torah law. Doesn't exist today. So they make a compromise. Now, if it's a black and white case, right? It's an open and shut case. Someone's liable, they have to pay this, that, fine. It's not like we're going to say, in general, let's say, there's a case, I'll give one example. There's a case came in that one person was a real estate agent and a person found an apartment for their son-in-law to rent. And the real estate agent, was obligated money. The person owed him money, right? Essentially owed him money. He owed him money for finding him the place. So the guy who was owed the money, the real estate agent, so he goes up first and he says, yeah, I showed him this apartment, and he owes me the money, right? What we call here in Israel, the Metivuch. He owes the money for finding the apartment, finder's fee. I get a finder's fee, right? Which is a normal thing. Now, it could be they didn't sign a document. Normally, people sign a document for a finder's fee, but okay, let's say they didn't sign a document over here. Did it by word of mouth. They did it, on the up and up. The other guy didn't pay. Now, seemingly he's obligated to pay. So, what was the other argument? The other guy says, why didn't he pay? He says he himself's a real estate agent. So he himself's a real estate agent, so why should he have to pay the other guy? Right now, what would be the obvious answer? The obvious answer is if this guy showed him the apartment, he has to pay him. It doesn't matter if he's a real estate agent or not. Even I know this, right? Even I knew that. So what was the other guy? So what did the real estate agent, the first guy, say? Who this person owes him the money? So what did he say? He said, by the way, he said, Shimon, how in the world did you get into that apartment? How do you get inside the apartment to see it? And what did Shimon say to Reuven? What did he answer back? Oh, I got in because you showed me the apartment. That's it. Reuven showed Shimon the apartment. If he showed him the apartment, that means he owes him money. Shimon owes him money for taking the apartment. And he didn't want to pay. Why didn't want to pay? He didn't want to pay for whatever reason. Right? He didn't want to pay. So in the end, so the Beis Din said, you got to pay. You're obligated to pay. They didn't make a compromise over here. Right? You had to pay the full amount. Now, if it's something they can't obligate 100%, they make a compromise. Right? Or they don't have enough evidence or whatever the case is. They'll make them pay, let's say 2/3, maybe 1/3, whatever. However the Beis Din sees it. However they call it. So in this case, it was just a funny case. Why? Because at the end, so Shimon has to pay. So Shimon says, okay. So he asked the rabbinical court, he asked the Beis Din, who has to pay, me or my son-in-law? So my Rebbe looked at him and said, you guys fight it again amongst yourselves. He says, he threw him out. Right? It's like, next case. And that was it. He said, yeah, but who has to pay? It's like, what do you want from us? You guys fight it out amongst yourselves. Right? But obviously the guy didn't want to pay. He had an obligation to pay. So something like that, black and white, then he has to pay 100% whatever he owed. There are certain things. There are certain things today that you have to go according to what goes on, what goes on in the world, what goes on, let's say here in Israel, or, in general. And sometimes they'll have to ask an expert. They'll bring in somebody, the rabbinical court will bring in someone who's an expert in that field, and they'll ask them, or they'll ask a few people, right? They'll ask them to give testimony and say, okay, this is the case. What do we do? What goes on practically today, according to secular law, according to, what goes on. You're going to say, who cares about secular law? Why do I care about secular law over here? And what's the answer? The answer is there are certain things that maybe the Gemara doesn't speak about, right? So to speak, or you have to know what goes on practically today. Because way back when, maybe it didn't account for certain things, whatever it is. So they'll ask people that are experts in that field. And they'll ask and say, okay, what's the mitzvah? What's going on? What's going on today? How does this apply? Does it apply? Doesn't apply? You're right. A lot of times we'll have to ask, experts in the field to bring someone in order to get information. So I remember once, I'll just tell another story. It's an interesting story that I was there. And someone came in that rented a car, or they would say in England, hired a car. I don't know how you hire a car because cars don't talk, but okay, they rented a car, means the same thing. They rented a car and the clutch burnt out. So the person, was part of the rental company or owned the rental company, said this guy, Reuven says Shimon burned out the clutch. Now Shimon says that the clutch was already faulty. I didn't do anything out of the ordinary. The clutch was faulty. So when the thing came in and they were discussing about cars, so I was sitting there. So the rabbis looked at me and said, okay, we're going to ask you some questions afterwards. So pay attention. So, okay. So anyway, they go back and forth. And the rabbis want to deliberate. So they tell the two people to go outside. And then they look at me and they say, okay, tell me, you have a car. It was an automatic. I learned how to drive a standard, a stick, whatever you want to call it. Years ago, I never, I only drove an automatic, but I more or less learned how to drive when I was first learning how to drive. So in the end, they said, is it possible for someone to burn out a clutch? I said, it's possible. I said, if the person themselves, they don't know how to drive at all, and they're an absolute dibwit, in my language. I didn't say that, but I pretty much said if the person's an idiot and he doesn't know what he's doing, he'll burn out the clutch. But I said, usually, someone who learns how to drive, they'll grind the gears like I did a bunch of times, right? I ground the gears a bunch of times, and that was it. Then I got the hang of it. I didn't grind gears anymore. So I said, unless the person doesn't know how to drive at all, it's a total dimwit in my language, then yeah, then they could burn out the clutch. But, if the clutch is already, older, got a lot of mileage on it, let's say, and a person grinds the gears a bunch of times, yeah, that could happen. It's unlikely, right? If it's a relatively new car, or it's a relatively new clutch, whatever the case is, unless the guy doesn't know what he's doing at all, and like for an hour he's driving somewhere grinding the gear, yeah, you can destroy the clutch, right? In theory. But I said, even somebody like that, so my claim was, I said, even somebody like that, they're going to get the hang of it. For sure, they're going to get the hang of it. I mean, it's hard to imagine someone's going to, if the clutch is in good shape, someone's going to destroy it, right? Very hard to imagine. So anyway, so I put my 2 cents in. They asked me, it's about the only time they ever asked me anything, about my opinion, because I was just an observer. And basically, as an observer, my job was, get people tea, coffee, like that was it. That was my job. I once opened my mouth about something, and that was it. They just looked at me and I said, tea, coffee. Anybody want anything? That my job wasn't to speak. My job definitely was not to speak. Right? If they asked me, so there are a few times that, the rabbis there asked me certain things, but in general, if they asked, then I answered. If they didn't ask, I didn't ask. That was it. That was, that was the law. That's the way it was. So when it comes, so why am I mentioning all this? So I mention all this for one very simple reason. And that is when it comes to rabbinical court today, again, we're talking about laws of damages. We're not talking about divorce. We're not talking about conversion, going in front of a rabbinical court. We're talking about damages. So, A claims against B. You did this or didn't do that, or you owe me money, whatever the case is, right? We're talking about majority cases, laws of damage. Those are the majority cases that came in. There were some things that came in with kashrus, some other cases came in, but the vast majority of cases were the laws of damages, right? Probably the most complex laws, in the code of Jewish law. So that's pretty much, what came in. But again, there are certain things that a rabbinical court, again, I'm just throwing this out there, that a rabbinical court cannot judge for one very simple reason: they don't have the same rabbinical ordination. And the rabbinical ordination we have today is a joke. And the reason is because, a person get rabbinical ordination, let's say in the laws of Shabbos, the laws of kashrus, the laws of mourning, family purity laws. People get them in all of these things, right? You take a requisite exam, you know the information, very good, right? But it doesn't mean a whole lot. Because there are people out there, and we've spoken about this a lot, there are people out there can have requisite knowledge, and they think they know a lot more than they do, right? This is highly problematic. The Mishnah Perkei Avos says, right? It says in Ethics for Our Fathers, everybody has to know their place. And if you're not sure, that's when you ask, right? And not being sure is okay, because there are a lot of things that are complex. Many, many things that are complex, right? And one of the things that, I started learning, going up north every week. So guys there wanted to learn the laws of damages. So we started with the laws of rabbinic court judges, which are a lot easier, I think, than the laws of damages themselves. I mean, some of it's a little bit complicated, but for the most part, it's relatively straightforward. So one thing we're going to get into, I don't think, maybe on Wednesday. Actually tomorrow, we're probably going to get into, and that is one of the things the rabbinical court has to do. A rabbinical court judge has to do is that they shouldn't jump too quick to answer. In other words, if they hear the case in front of them, they don't, or, someone comes to them with a question, they don't answer straight away, right? Even if it's something that's obvious, they think about it. They don't answer straight away. If they answer straight away, they're called Rishoyim, they're called evil, they're called Libo Gospel. They're called that their heart is haughty, that they are considered to be conceited. So you're going to say, wow, this is an unbelievable thing, right? This is an unbelievable thing. Why are they called haughty over here? Let's say they know the answer straight away, because you don't jump to answer. You don't jump to answer. You think this is something my rabbi certainly ingrained in my head. Asked me a question, about something once. And he said, okay, how would you, what would you say about this? I asked him a question. And before he answered, he said, what would you say? So I answered him. And he's like, I didn't ask you for an answer. He said, I don't want you to answer. I want you to think. He said, don't give me an answer straight away. It goes even further, right? Because there's another halacha that says that for a rabbinic court judge, even if they had a case exactly the same or similar to a previous case, right? Let's say a case comes in and they had a similar case, almost the exact same case as they had before. It could have been months before, could have been a year before, whatever it was. It was a similar case, if not the exact same case. So then, what's the halacha? The halacha is that you shouldn't just say, oh, it's the same, it's similar to this, it's the same case, so you go according like this and like this. So the halacha is if a person does that, they're called evil. They're also called being haughty. Why? Right? It's an unbelievable novelty here. I never would have said such a thing in a million years. Why not? That's why, they didn't, first of all, I wasn't born around that time. I don't know, where my soul was at that time, but they wouldn't have been asking me that question. Because I would have said it's pretty obvious if it's the exact same case. The exact same case. Why can't I answer? It's the same case and answer it straight away. So what's the underlying halacha here? What does the halacha say? The halacha says, you know what? Even if it's the same case or a similar case, you have to ask another colleague. You have to ask someone. They don't have to be necessarily greater than you in knowledge, but they have to be at least on par. They have to have similar knowledge to you in order to answer the question. Right? But again, what's someone going to ask over here? Someone's going to say it's the same thing I said. It's the same question. It's a similar question. If it's a similar question, then why do I have to ask someone else? Even better, it's the exact same question you had before. And the halacha is I still have to ask, right? The rabbinical court judge still has to ask someone, right? He has to confer with the colleague. Why? Because we can't make assumptions here. Even if it's similar, even if it seems like it's the exact same case, first of all, we never make assumptions. We never say, well, this is similar to that, this is similar to that. The rabbis in the Talmud can tell you that. We can't say that. You have to know all the details, every last detail, because you might make a mistake. That's why the first halacha says, don't jump to answer so quickly. Because you might make a mistake. That's called being evil. That's called being conceited. Oh, I know the answer. 2 and 2, 4. That's it. Right? Magic. I know the answer. Come on. Why can't I answer? You got to think. When it comes to Torah law or rabbinic law, it doesn't really matter. Someone comes in front of you, you got to stop and think. You don't give an answer straight away. In this case, even if it's similar, even if it seems like it's the exact same case, the halacha states you have to ask someone else. You have to confer with a colleague. Whether they're greater than you or not doesn't matter. You have to confer with someone else, and you have to, and if they say it's a similar case, whatever, the same thing, fine. Right? The reason is we have biases. We may think it's the same. Maybe we're missing something. It's a little bit of showing humility. Because the reality is, I might say, hey, I think it's the same. I think it's exactly the same. Maybe you're missing something. Maybe there's something that's not exactly clear over here that you're missing. So why be so haughty? That's what it says. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. Don't be so haughty. Don't be evil. It's calling you evil. It's calling a rabbinic court judge evil if they try and say this is similar to that. Right? Because I remember I saw it. I looked at it once, looked at it twice, looked at it 3 times, looked at the commentaries. Blew my mind because you're not showing humility. That was the answer. You're jumping too fast. Don't answer when, no matter if it's similar or not. You might be missing some important ingredients. Maybe you're not. Maybe it's exactly the same. Maybe the law is exactly the same, but you want to give an answer? You want to give a clear-cut answer when there may be some other factors involved? You don't want to do that. So the halacha is you have to ask someone else. You have to ask a colleague. You cannot rely on yourself. Right? If a person, I would say like this, there's a different law if a person is what we call a mumcha l'rabim. Someone who's a mumcha l'rabim is an expert. He's a world-class expert in the laws of damages. Someone like that, somebody like that, you don't need a rabbinical court. You go straight to him. Right? 2 people come in front of him and they ask the question. Now, technically, he could judge it if they accept his judgment. Really, he should have 2 other dayanim, 2 other rabbinic court judges. Right? Just to, bounce off ideas, etc. But in general, if he's a world-class expert, technically speaking, he doesn't need to. So in this case, if it be a world-class expert, okay. Right? And he says it's similar. Right? But everybody else can't say that. Right? But the halacha is interesting. I have to look this up because it doesn't mention a mumcha l'rabim. It doesn't mention a world-class expert. It just mentions a dayan. Someone who's a rabbinic court judge. Obviously, there are different levels. Right? But, I'm just thinking out loud. I could ask the question. So someone's a world-class expert. Why does he have to ask somebody? He's a world-class expert. What will be the answer? The answer is he still should ask someone just to be sure. Just to be sure, but he might not have to. Right? According to the strict letter of the law, maybe he doesn't have to because he's an expert. And if he's an expert, Why would he have to over here? He shouldn't have to. Right? So that would be the answer. Right? That would be the answer. That really he could do it. But it's probably better that he doesn't. Right? Lest he might make a mistake. But he's a world-class expert. Okay. Doesn't necessarily mean he's not fallible. Right? It doesn't mean he's perfect, by any stretch. It means he has an unbelievable amount of knowledge. Person can make a mistake. Right? Person could make a mistake. So someone here says, because we're human, you're right. We are human, but if someone has a certain level of knowledge, and they give an answer on the spot, they can do that. Right? Why can they do that? Because they have world-class knowledge. But when you're talking about a rabbinic court judge and someone comes in front of you, even if you have world-class knowledge, doesn't mean you should rely on it. Who knows? Maybe you're missing something. Maybe it's a piece of information you missed, you didn't think of. Right? That's why you need to air out things with other people, even if you're greater than them, in order to see what do they say. You can disagree with them. Then you go by the majority. But 100% we are fallible. Right? That we can't rely on our own knowledge in general. If it's something black and white. How many candles do I light the first day of Hanukkah? Right? 1. That's easy. Right? And plus the shamash, the one that you light the candle with. Good. How many do I light in the second night? 2 plus the shamash. 3 plus the shamash the next day. 4. Okay, this thing is explicit. Now, if the question got a little bit complicated, right? What would happen? Give one example. Let's say on the on the 4th night, 2 candles go out 2 minutes after you lit them. Big wind comes, 2 candles get blown up. Do I have to go back and light them? Now, what's the halacha? The halacha is it's a mitzvah. Once I light, even if the candles go out a split second later, I did the mitzvah. I fulfill my obligation. If I fulfill my obligation, who says I have to go back and relight? I shouldn't have to go back and relight. Right? But the halacha is I should go back. It should be lit at least a half an hour. These candles. So if it should be lit at least a half an hour, I go back and relight it. I don't make a blessing on it. Right? But if it's something more complicated, that was just one example. But if something more complicated, let's say you're not sure, you got to look it up. You don't want to give an answer until you're 100% sure. Right? Until it's clear. Now, someone could be a world-class expert. They think it's clear. They still confer with others. Unless 2 people come in front of this world-class expert and they say, okay, judge us. We have this thing, judge us. Now, he's allowed to. Not the best thing to do, but he's allowed to. He's allowed to over here because he's got the status of a world-class expert. So if that would be the case, they would accept him. Fine. In general. In this case, even if he has world-class expertise, doesn't matter. You don't let him judge on his own. You make sure there are other people there for the sole reason that they never make a mistake. Now, it could come out that he knew what the halacha was from the very beginning, but you want to be sure. You don't want to take any chances, right? It's interesting. If a person had money to invest, no matter how much, but to you it's a significant amount, you are going to be very careful who you invest with. Why are you going to be very careful? Very simple. You don't want to lose money. You don't want to throw money away. So, when it comes to something like that, that's what you'll do. Now, when it comes to spiritual things, people take a back seat over here. Right? I mentioned last night in Pirkei Avos that my Rebbe was with, once before Shabbos, he was with Mordechai Pogramansky of blessed memory. He was very, very stringent about kashrus. My Rebbe mentioned, he said he saw someone, beards, look like a frum Jew, like a religious Jew. And he said he was selling challah and wine. Am I allowed to buy from him? That's what my Rebbe asked him. Mordechai Pogramansky answered him. He said, if you had a large sum of money, would you entrust this man with your money? The Rebbe said, probably not. I'm not really sure. I don't really know him. So he said, if you don't really know him, how could you rely on his conscience? Right? How in the world could you rely on his conscience over here? Right? In other words, if you wouldn't do it with money, you wouldn't trust him with money. How can you trust him in spiritual things? Well, he looks like a religious person. Yeah, so what? Does that mean he knows what he's doing in kashrus? Does that mean he has requisite knowledge? Does that mean he's a rabbinic scholar? You have no idea. If you spoke to him in learning, different things, and you see how he acts and this and that, that's a different issue. But if you see a guy walking on the streets, right, looks like an Orthodox Jew, right, who says I can eat by him? You don't know, right? You don't know them from a hole in the wall. So the answer would be that if you wouldn't trust them with a sum of money, a nice sum of money, why would I trust them with conscience? You're going to say, but doesn't everyone have a chazakah? Doesn't everyone have you have to prove them wrong first. Why would I assume this person's not on the up and up? Why would I assume his kashrus is not to a certain standard or whatever? But if you don't know who the person is, you don't know them from a hole in the wall, my language. You don't know them at all. Why in the world would I think their kashrus is good? What is going to convince me the kashrus is good? Someone else that knows them, references. You speak to the person, you see what they know, see what their level of knowledge is. Person can say they keep kosher. It doesn't necessarily mean they know what they're doing. You can tell me, okay, but they look like an Orthodox Jew. What's the problem? So you're right. Maybe I won't disagree in that point, but again, doesn't mean we can rely on everybody. I'll give an example. I had friends here a number of years ago that I used to eat by their parents. When I was becoming religious and all that, they were conservative, and these people really didn't know. They knew more than a lot of people, but doesn't really mean anything. They have such great knowledge, and certainly when it comes to kashrus and other things. So they asked me like why I wouldn't eat, in their house. So I was telling them, whatever, it's by a Shabbos meal, and I was telling them, I said, the laws of kashrus is complex. They're very, very complex. So I was telling them, I said, how easy it is to mess up things? And they're like, here, Kaufman opened up his big mouth. And I said, how easy it is to mess up things? And here I am, I had dairy salad dressing being poured on to a meat plate. Now you're going to say, okay, no big deal because it's all cold, right? Everything was cold. Wasn't a problem, but it was actually kind of funny. As I'm pouring it, I said, how easy it is to mess things up, and I'm pouring this, the salad dressing. So, point made. Just because the person says, they keep Shabbos or they keep they keep kosher, doesn't necessarily mean they know what they're doing. And if it's someone who's reform and conservative, that's for sure they don't know what they're doing. That's clear, right? The liberal, whatever you want to call them. I don't think there's anything to talk about. I don't care how long they've been keeping Shabbos, right? They're not going to know the ins and outs because they don't know how to learn the laws, right? But without even going into all that, the point is, there's a certain level of trust. If you don't know the person from the hole in the wall, how can you trust them? How can you trust their kashrus? Now you're going to say, but how do we rely on kashrus anyway? How do we know which kashrus organization is better than the other? Good question. So there's certain ones, certainly here in Israel, right? There's certain ones that are known for cream of the crop, right? Definitely cream of the crop. So I think today is a relatively weak generation, I always say. Teflon generation, tissue generation, whatever you want to call it. And people relying on rabbinic supervision that they shouldn't rely on, right? They say, like, what could be bad? What could be really bad in this? Again, question is what type of standard you want to hold to. You want to hold to a minimal standard or you want to hold to a higher standard? And if you want to hold to a higher standard, the only certain things you'll eat, right? Certain rabbinic supervision you'll eat. Others you won't touch. Doesn't mean it's not kosher, not necessarily. I'm not going to say all these other rabbinic supervision places, they're not kosher at all. I'm not going to say that. I think some of them are highly problematic. I don't think there's any question. But, am I going to say it's outright treif? Some people would. Some people would. I wouldn't necessarily go that far. Right? Depends what it is. Right? But kashrus is complex. If it's complex, why are you playing with fire? Why are you relying on something you probably should never rely on? Right? In other words, if it doesn't have a good name, it's a good reason why it doesn't have a good name. Not just because of politics. There are some kashrus organizations people may not eat because of politics. Okay, I'm not talking about politics. Right? We're talking about quality. We're talking about, having someone on the premises on a daily basis, checking things and making sure they're up to snuff and all that. Some are better, some are worse. But again, why would we today, why would some people play with fire? In my language. And what's the simple answer? Because people are lazy. People say, really? Come on. Other people rely on this. Those people rely on it. Why can't I rely on it? Doesn't matter what people do. Don't go by what people do. We want to go by what the best thing for me is. And if the best thing for me is not to cut corners and to only rely on certain, rabbinic supervision, okay, then that's what you do. So why play with it? I see it a lot, unfortunately. People rely on things they shouldn't rely on. Because, okay, there are these sweets. Come on. Why can't I eat chocolate? What could be in it? What's so bad? Most people don't know how things are done. They have no idea how things are done. So when it comes to meat, when it comes to, processed things, anything processed probably kill you in the process anyway. But anything processed, you're relying on the stringencies that they have. You're relying on the leniencies, that they have. But there are some that are much more stringent than others. And you pay more for that. And it's worth it. Because you don't want things messed up. Right? You don't want to rely on, on other things. You just don't want to. Right? That's what I would say. This generation, people are more lenient. Again, I'm not exactly sure why. I don't even have a bad answer. Right? But people are lenient on things, on, certain kashrus organizations we shouldn't be lenient on. So someone will say, well, I lived in a certain community and that was their standard. Not everyone has that standard. Okay. Question is, why not? There are some organizations that, were bad and now, they're much better. True. That is true. But at the same time, there are organizations that are not careful. You're going to say, but how can they not be careful? They're selling to the masses. Don't ask. Kashrus is a business also. It's a business. Right? And people can look the other way, otherwise they may take a loss. Could take a big loss. Right? That's why when it comes to, let's say, animals, if there's a question whether the animal's a treifa or not, when the animal was slaughtered properly or not, or whatever the case is. And you say, well, now, if we go like this, we're going to have to take a loss on this animal. A cow's a pretty big animal, pretty big loss over here. You're only killing, let's say, 90 animals that day, right? For like 6-7 hours, because you have to cut up the animals and salt them. We're not going to get gross here, right? But what, you have a couple animals or a number of animals that have, major questions. The person who owns them or is paying for this may look the other way or may pay someone to look the other way. Why? It's a serious loss, right? Thousands of dollars lost over here. So you have to have a lot of fear of heaven, when it comes to kashrus. And there are places that, they've been undermined. There've been underhanded things done that, boggles the mind. So, I would always say, whatever a person does in their house, let them do it in their house. But if they're doing it for the sake of the masses, if they're doing it for other people that they should have kosher food, kosher wine, whatever it is. So who cares about what your standard is? You want to go according to the highest standard. Why? Because you want to make it impeccable. So other people, so not just at some minimal level. We don't want minimal level. That's what's going to happen here in Israel. If they take control outside of the chief rabbinate when it comes to kashrus. And any Tom, Dick, and Harry can open their own kashrus organization. That's a scary proposition because then they can do what they want. At least if it's regulated, there are certain laws, right? They have to abide by. Otherwise, they lose their certification. But if it's a free-for-all and anyone can do whatever they want, the standard goes way down. But again, if you're involved in these type of things, person, sells, holy items, tefillin, mezuzahs, other things, if you're making them for other people, then you want to hold to the higher standard. You don't want to hold to a minimal standard, right? You're not doing it for yourself, right? For argument's sake, who cares what you think? Who cares, where you're holding in this whole thing? The bottom line is you're going to do what the higher standard is. You don't rely on a lower standard. But you're not doing it for yourself. That's the whole point. You're doing it for others. Right? So why would you do it to a lower standard? Because you're lazy. You want to cut corners. You want to save money. Okay. Who doesn't want to make money? Who doesn't want to make money? Plenty of people want to make money, but at whose expense? Tell you what happened to me in Chile. Lost my job because of this. Mentioned this before. There's someone giving kashrus to wine, proper rabbinic supervision, and he was sending people that weren't religious to watch the wine. That means the wine is status of wine you can't drink. He's selling it all over the world. So, I contacted the organization. I didn't take it as far as I should have. I ended up losing my job. Other things happen. This person yelling and screaming. Defamation. He's drawing my blood, this, that. But everybody knew this. Everybody in the community knew what happened over here. I couldn't believe no one called it in because this person had power, this, that, whatever it was. So someone else tells me, this guy tells me, I'm not making any money from it. How dare you? I'm doing it with Shem Shemayim, right? For the sake of heaven. Doing it for the sake of heaven, you loser, you idiot. You're not doing it for the sake of heaven. You're doing it to make money. Oh, but he says not making money. He says not making money over here. Someone else told me that. Why are you taking away someone's parnasa? Why are you taking away someone's living? Someone's livelihood? Because he's a fraud. He's a fraud. That's why he's defrauding people. He deserves to have his living taken away. But everybody knows the truth. Right? So my answer would be very simple. Very simple. Oh, that's what you want to do? So you do it for yourself. Don't do it for the masses. Because that wine has to be burnt. That wine, not necessarily burnt, has to be flushed down the toilet. No one can drink it. No Jew can drink it. It's forbidden. Let's make clear. For a secular Jew who doesn't keep Shabbos to watch wine. He's got the status of a non-Jew. Can't watch wine. Forbidden. So this person lies to everybody. And he says he's burning me. He says that. I'm not making money from it. And someone else says, why are you taking away his livelihood? The guy's a liar. In short, the guy's a liar. Total liar. So again, I could understand, maybe couldn't find someone that kept Shabbos to watch the wine, whatever the case is. I don't really care. It doesn't really matter. But bottom line, if you want to do that for yourself, you want to rely on it for yourself, very good. Do whatever you want. Right? That's not my problem. But you want to sell it all over the world. You want to have proper rabbinic supervision on it. You want to claim that it's totally kosher, you're wrong. It's not. It's the worst kind of being unkosher over here. So again, if it's about money, cutting corners, I get it. But there's a kashrus issue. There's a major kashrus issue. If there's a major kashrus issue, what? You have no morals? You have no scruples? You don't care. You don't care what you're feeding anybody else? Someone else, while I'm just on this tirade, someone else has someone, slaughter cows, a ritual slaughterer, that's not allowed to kill in his own country. He's not allowed to slaughter in his own country. What does that tell you? If he's not allowed to slaughter in his own country, that means he's not reliable. So why do you let him slaughter for other people? Why are you putting your name on it when it's extremely problematic? Because other people should be able to eat kosher meat. I don't get it. If it's problematic, the meat's probably not kosher. There's a major doubt if it's kosher or not. So I asked the Rosh Bahag, the head of the community in Argentina, who knows all the ritual slaughterers, and I said, is there a doubt over here by this guy? He goes, no, there's no doubt at all. It's treif, can't eat it. No doubts. So I asked him, okay, so this person is allowing him to do it. Why is he doing it? Why is he allowing him to do it? The person laughed. This Rav laughed at me. He goes, that's your greatest question? You don't think he's done other things that are bad and that are wrong and that are underhanded? Undermine Judaism? It's not the worst thing. Right? It's totally not the worst thing. I was flabbergasted. Again, I don't care what you do in your own house. I could care less what you do in your own house. Do whatever you want. But why are you going to tell me this meat is kosher and I saw to it that's kosher when the person who's killing the animal can't be relied on? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it? No, it doesn't. Either it's cheaper, it's about money. I don't know what it's about. But how, I understand there were scandals in certain places for years. We're selling non-kosher meat. I understand why, because it's cheaper. It's a heck of a lot cheaper. Till they finally caught the person. It was years selling to a community non-kosher meat. I can't imagine what the portion of hell this guy is going to get. To make money? Okay, you're going to make significant money. I get it. But you're feeding, people are relying on kashrus level here. You're defrauding them. The food they're eating that they think is kosher, okay. They didn't know. So they're not going to get as much of a sin. Right? But what's the real issue? We mentioned many times, the Jew, if he eats non-kosher, it affects their soul. Even if science hasn't proven it, affects them in a negative way. So even if you want to say, okay, they didn't know, they were under onus over here, it's not their fault, you're right. Not their fault. They are going to pay a certain price, but it's not their fault. But it affects them in a negative way. So you want to tell me someone can be that unscrupulous? And someone can say, you know what? I'm more interested in making money than people's kashrus. It means you got to be very careful. You got to be very careful over here. I hear people all the time say, I want to kill my own animals. Forget about killing your own animals. I don't care if you think you know what you're doing. You don't. The only way you're going to know what you're doing is if you learn the laws properly. The laws are complex. The laws are extremely complex. Not only the laws complex, you have to learn under somebody. They have to watch you do it a number of times. Right? Not to mention the X fact, you have to have a tremendous amount of fear in heaven. Right? What do I mean? Person takes a knife, razor sharp. You go in the neck, boom, you come out, but maybe you delayed a little bit. Maybe you nick the bone. And if then it makes a nick in the knife, can't eat it. Did you check the knife before to make sure there were no nicks in it? Question is, if I didn't check, and I find a nick afterwards, am I allowed to eat the animal? Even if it was a kosher slaughter over here. There are a lot of questions here. People cannot learn this stuff on their own. We see that, I'm going to give a class later in the Noahide laws. We see that when people think they have knowledge or a certain working, quote unquote, working level of knowledge. You know what they say? If you learn a little bit about a lot of things, you know everything about nothing. And these people are frauds, almost every last one of them, right? Not all of them. Many of them are 100% frauds because they don't know what they're doing. Sure, I can keep Shabbos as a super Noahide. Sure, I can keep Shabbos. I'm not going to convert. Sure, it applies to me. Sure, I can learn Kabbalah, do other things. Really? You really know the sources? You really know how to learn it, but you can't even read Hebrew that well. Right? I'll call them out because they're frauds. Right? Almost every last one of them. So you give someone a little bit of knowledge. What do they do with a little bit of knowledge? Destroy it. Oh, I know this. You know, I learned this. I'm good enough. I'm good. I can give this over. You don't know. It's complex. You know, things you think maybe more straightforward, less straightforward. It's a good thing things have been translated into English. Otherwise, you have no clue. Right? That's why I always say, person wants to learn. They want to learn Gemara. You got to learn from someone who knows how to learn. You're not going to learn by art school by yourself. And it's not for non-Jews anyway. Certainly not before conversion. Right? But at the end of the day, a person has to have a little bit of humility. You know, you got some people that got big egos, huge egos, even bigger than mine, much bigger than mine. You know, and they're going to say, oh, really? You think this? You don't know how to learn. Really? Don't know how to learn. Not at all. 30 years learning, don't know anything. Never learned properly. Do you have any credentials? No. So good. So you have to spew your venom against me. Knock down someone's got real credentials. One of my personal pet peeves, as most people know. So good. If you know the material, good. But if you're making up your own thing, you don't have your own credentials. You don't have anybody behind you to verify what you say, and it's not true. I'm going to have a lot of fun tonight. Right? I'm going to have a lot of fun later. Because that's what it is. We're going to take certain terminology, and we're going to show what it really means, not according to them, and how they butcher it. No pun intended here. So when it comes to kashrus in general, we don't want to rely on grade, C. It might be kosher, minimal level. Well, the question is, do we want to be minimal Jews? Or do you want to be? Right? If it's about somebody, somebody's not going to convert, they want to keep kosher, which really doesn't apply to them. They want to take minimal level, maximum level, doesn't matter. Doesn't affect you. Someone that points about Hebrew National. You're right. Hebrew National always been problematic. Right? Even, when I was much younger. Hebrew National, very problematic. No Jew should eat it. Non-Jew wants to eat it, fine. There's no problem with them eating it, even if it's not kosher. Why? Because they don't have an obligation to keep kosher. I don't care if you're super Noahide or not. You have no obligation whatsoever to keep kosher. Doesn't apply to you. Not only that, doesn't affect you. And we saw by the Kli Yakar in the Book of Leviticus Chapter 11. And he says the non-Jew's never going to keep anything that doesn't make practical sense to them. That doesn't benefit them. So we see, says the Kli Yakar, that a non-Jew can eat all kinds of things. Creepy, crawly things, who knows what. They're not affected by it except by the ones that ate the bats in Wuhan. We won't go there. Right? But they, if they eat all this garbage, you see they're not affected by it. So by a Jew, they are. It's a different thing, even if science hasn't proven it. So comes along the Kli Yakar, we mentioned this many times. Kli Yakar says, doesn't benefit a non-Jew over here. Doesn't affect them. Why would they do it? So super Noahide say, I still get a mitzvah, but why would you do it? Doesn't apply. 100% doesn't apply. Right? Food for thought. I'm going to ram that home later. In any case, even if it's a minimal level, do we want to be minimal level Jews? Or do you want to be? There are plenty of mediocre Jews in the world, unfortunately. A lot of them. We don't need to perpetuate that. We're not interested in perpetuating that. What do we want to do? We want to be the best we can be. But for goodness sakes, if you're in a position of power and you have the ability to say, okay, I want people to have a certain level of conscience. So I'm going to stick my name on it. I'm going to put my name out there. Very good. You're going to put your name out there, but I don't get it. But it's not even minimal level. It's more than minimal level. It's problematic. It's totally problematic over here. If it's totally problematic, why would you do it? Right? So what would Kaufman's answer be? Kaufman's answer would be very simple. You know what the reason is? Because they want to cut. They want to make more profit margin. They want to make more money. Does it matter? Does it matter that this person who's killing animals is not allowed to kill in his own community? Oh, no, that's slander. No, it's not slander. You know why it's not slander? Because the one who checks all the ones who ritually slaughter knows this person. He knows them personally. He knows he's not up to snuff. And he's got an obligation to warn other people. That's not lashon hara. You know why? Because this person now, problematic when he kills animals, very good chance the animal's not kosher. So why shouldn't people be warned? Not only that, someone sends non-Shomer Shabbos Jews to watch wine. Why shouldn't people be warned about that? Why isn't it? That's yain nesech. No Jew can drink it. It's being sold all over the world. Europe, Israel, America. So why aren't we worried about that? So where's the integrity? It's about money. Right? It's about prestige. I don't know what it's about. But I told my Rebbe this, and I called him up and he told me I had to call it in. And again, I didn't go as far as I could have with it, but I asked him point blank, and I said, I don't get it. I said, if you're giving kashrus and you're putting your stamp of approval on this kashrus, how can you be a fraud? So I asked them point blank. I said, where's the integrity? Where's the integrity over here? I heard on the other line was laughter. He just started laughing. I said, I didn't think I said something that funny. And he said, oh, now you're getting the sample of what I see on a daily basis and what I hear on a daily basis. He said, there's a lot of krubkeit. There's a lot of terrible things that go on. I sat in his rabbinical court. This was not the chief rabbinate. This wasn't anyone just walking off the street, coming in, get married, get divorced, whatever it is. These are people, big hats, long coats, pay is down, who knows? This person said, yeah, I lied about this. Yeah, I did this. Yeah, I did that. Whatever you would say, it's a good thing you have a connection to me. Otherwise, you'd lose faith in Judaism by you see what goes on here. And I saw things, I only gave a few examples. I saw a number of things. My eyes couldn't believe what I saw. My ears couldn't believe what I heard. And I asked my everyone about a certain case. I said, listen, even I know this guy's no leg to stand on. And he's got this Tohen Rabbani. He's got like this, this lawyer, so to speak. Wasn't really a lawyer, but someone who presented the case. And he's sitting there yelling and screaming and this and that. And I said, listen, I even know he doesn't have a case. I said, if I know he doesn't have a case, what's he yelling and screaming about? So my everyone looked at me and he said, if I would pay you that much money, he'd also give such a claim. I go, no, I wouldn't. I go, how much? It's crazy. Person doesn't have a leg to stand on. Right? Forget about them saying themselves. They got someone else to say it for them. And they're lying through their teeth. So what happened to Torah? What happened to mitzvahs over here? What in the world's going on in this crooked, wacko world? Even in the religious world. Right? I would think and I would hope most people be on the up and up. I would hope. I'm not going to say everyone's a crook. I'm not going to say that. And a lot of, very God-fearing people. But when it comes to money, one of the things you check a person, kiso, kaso, koso. The Gemara says, kiso, your pocket. Koso, how you drink, what you say after you drink. And kaso, how you get, if you get angry. But when it comes to money, in general, we're our own worst enemy. 100% we're our own worst enemy. People do things. Could be out of desperation. It could be they just don't care. They just want to make more money. And again, by kosher meat, I understand. A butterball turkey, Thanksgiving coming up in a number of weeks. 39 cents a pound, probably more now. How much would a kosher turkey be? $1.50 a pound, $2 a pound, $3. It's triple the price. So what would I rather do? Give them kosher turkey, $3 a pound. I make a minimal amount of profit, right? Or, really give them non-kosher. I'm making, 2.5 times profit. So you're gonna say, how can I do that? I can't mislead people. Money talks though. When a person sees the profit margin and they see, well, okay, I won't eat this, but I'll let other people eat it. I'll look the other way. So where's the fear of heaven? Where's the fear of heaven here? Right? So again, I'm not going to say every place is like that. It's not the case. But yeah, when people get caught, it looks really, really bad. And I saw a number of things when I was in South America. God should have mercy on all of us. I mean, crazy things. People were just scoundrels. And no other way to say it. Doing extortion, non-kosher meats, non-kosher wine. It's a good thing I got out when I got out. It's crazy. I mean, it's a lot better now there, than it was. These two losers aren't there anymore, thank God. I'm not even going to call them rabbis, right? Thank God they're not part of the community anymore. But, when you do things, they'll pay the price. God will take care of them. I don't need to pray for that. God will take care of them one way or another, whether in this world or the next. Nice guys, they may not finish first, but these guys not going to finish first. They'll, what goes around comes around. They'll get it. It's only a matter of when. So, we want to see justice now, right? So a person can't pray, I just mentioned this as well, because someone asked me earlier, are we allowed to pray for the downfall of our enemies? We do. Every day we say in Shemon Esrei, silent meditation, into these heretics or heretical groups. They shouldn't have any hope. Now, we got to be careful not to pray for certain individuals, right? Certain individuals, maybe they've caused us damage, and we say, okay, in the middle of our Shemon Esrei, in the middle of our prayer, we say, okay, God, I want you to take care of them. I know you're going to take care of them. I have no doubt. But between me and you, wink, wink, I want you to take care of them. You don't have to kill them. When they cause me a lot of damage, I want them to suffer. Comes along the Gemara says, oh, you want God to take care of someone else. They cause you damage. Let's say no one disagrees. They cause you damage. So God says, okay, let's open up your file. Let's see where you're holding. Let's see if you deserve me to take care of this person or not. Now, when's the only time you want your file open? The only time you want your file opened is when? Only on Rosh Hashanah. That we have no choice. God judges all mankind, even non-Jews, and he judges the world in general. But if God's going to scrutinize us now and say, okay, let's see where they're holding now. Let's see where they're holding the last few days, last week, last month. God's going to scrutinize us with a fine tooth comb. I don't know too many people are going to be able to pass. So you're going to say, but why? I was bothered by this when I was learning this, right? It bothered me to no end. Why open up my file here or anybody's file? This person caused damage. Let's say a tremendous amount of damage. Why shouldn't God do judgment with them? Why can't I pray for God to do judgment with them? So what's the simple answer? Because when a person says, God, I want you to do judgment with them, that means he doesn't run the world. That means you're calling God out himself. That's what you're saying. You're saying, you know what? I want this person taken care of. You know why? Because you're not doing your job. You're not taking responsibility. I want them knocked out. Let's say they deserve to be knocked out. Maybe they did something unbelievably egregious. Unbelievably egregious. God says, Kaufman, okay, this person did something egregious. You're right. 100%. I don't disagree. But you're calling me out and you're saying I'm not taking care of business. You don't think I know what he did or what she did? You don't think I run the world? You don't think I'm in control? Don't worry about it. This is not your fight over here. You had to go through what you ever had to go through. Doesn't matter why. I know why God says. I'm not telling you. Nah, 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 nah. I'm not telling you over here why you have to go through it. You have to go through it for whatever reason. Now you want to tell me I'm not doing my job? I'm not going to take care of this person? You think this person's going to get a free lunch? No free lunch. That person's going to pay the price. Don't you worry. I may get them now. I may certainly get them later. I may get them both. I may just wipe out their whole family. Don't worry about it. I will take care of business. So it's a lack of emunah. It's a total lack of emunah. Why? Because you're saying God's not taking care of business. So when you come to the prayer in the 19 blessings, the Shmona Esrei, whatever you want to call it, you come to the prayer of judgment. And you in your mind want God to take care of this person and cause you pain. So you don't pray for a specific person. You say, when you say that blessing, you say, Melech Ohev Tzedakah U'Mishpat. The God that loves judgment, loves righteousness and judgment. So what do I have intention? What's my minimal intention besides understanding the words, which is really my minimal intention? The minimal intention here is what? God, you do judgment with who you need to do judgment with. That's your intention. You're not thinking about anybody in particular. Because if you think about somebody in particular, God's going to call you out. Now, what about the blessing we said before? From Ashinim? What about the blessing of all the heretical groups? Yeah, that's a different issue. That's a different issue. Why is it a different issue? Because these are blaspheming against God, doing terrible things, and you want God to take care of them. Let them have no hope. So God will wipe them out. God, we pray that you take care of them. And now we're talking about the Samaritans, could be talking about the Christians, could even be talking about secular Israelis that hate Torah and secular Jews. They're not part of necessarily, a Christian sect and all that, but you know what? They're part of the mixed multitude. Many of them are part of the mixed multitude that have to be wiped out before the Messiah comes. Right? So we're praying God take care of them. I mean, things look pretty bad right now. What's going on? In a number of different ways. And they have a lot of clout. So in order for Messiah to come, they'll have to be wiped out. As the Vilna Gaon says in his book, Evan Shlomo. But that's not a contradiction. The fact that we want God to take care of them, that's not a contradiction. Whoever they may be. But having someone in mind specifically, but someone's going to say, come on, God, look what they did. Look what they did over here. They did this, they did that, they did the other thing. They did a million things over here. Right? So God wants you to take care of them. Why in the world don't you take care of them? So what's God going to answer? Again, I put on my funny George Burns glasses, my funny mustache. What would I say if I was playing God? I was like, what's the matter? You don't like the job I'm doing? You don't like how I run the world? Where's your emunah over here? Daf Nuggies, you went through this. I understand. You went through a lot of pain, a lot of anguish, a lot of difficulty. I get it. But don't think for 1 second I'm not in control. And don't think nothing's ever going to happen. Don't think they won't pay the price. They'll pay the price. Right? And these two people, I let them know clear. I said, God will be the judge over here. God, God will take care of business. I'm not worried. You might be smiling and whistling Dixie now. It ain't going to be long. It ain't going to be for long. God can have a lot of patience. God should have mercy. He should have mercy on them. But he'll take care of business. And if I pray someone else should get hurt or damaged, not even killed, God's going to say, who are you? Let me open up your file. And again, this bothered me. Why? Why should my file be open over here? This person caused unbelievable damage. Unbelievable damage. Everyone would agree. And this is what he gets. This is what they get, They live to a ripe old age. God said, but you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know at the end of the day what's going to happen. I may make them suffer for eternity. I may not give them a portion of the world to come. And they may suffer like you may not imagine. So what are you calling me out for? Don't think I don't know what I'm doing. Don't think I'm not taking care of business. If it comes upon God and says, oh, you don't think I'm doing my job? I'm going to open your file. One possible explanation. Because you're lacking in emunah. You don't think I'm doing my job right. And if anyone's ever been damaged, which is all of us, right? And we've gone through difficulties. We want that justice. We want justice to be done. Nobody wants to feel like a dish rag, like they've been abused. Nobody wants that. But when you see the person has it easy, the person doesn't seem to suffer in many ways. So then the person asks, so where's the measure for measure? This person did this, I want him payback. It's logical. It's 100% logical on our part. But we're missing one major factor. What's that major factor called? Torah. That's not the Torah way. God takes care of business, whether we see it, whether we don't see it. And even if we want someone to suffer and feel the pain, and we don't see that they're feeling the pain in this world, who's to say they're going to have a portion of the world to come? Who's to say they're not going to suffer in other ways? Maybe they will. But part of us, deep down, we want to see them pay. That's why some people say, well, it's not fair. Got off scot-free. To a certain extent. Didn't seem to have to pay very much. Yeah, but they could be suffering in other ways we don't know. But it doesn't mean they're not going to get it. So in short, it's a lack of emunah. 100% a lack of emunah. Right? So I'll take questions. I know there are a lot of questions here because I went on for a while. Someone has cemetery laws. Cemetery laws, certainly a person can't step on a grave that's, desecrating the grave. You stand nearby the grave or whatever. Someone who's not a Kohen, right? They can be within, very close to a dead body, right? If they go to a cemetery, at least when they come out of the cemetery, to wash their hands. They should definitely wash their hands for, a certain level of impurity. Wash your hands. You don't have to go to the mikveh. You just wash your hands. A Kohen, as long as they're not within certain distance of a dead body, right? If they're far away, okay, right? They can't get too close. Certainly can't get too close, even if it's for someone they're obligated to mourn for, mother, father, sister, brother, God forbid, a child or a spouse, right? So they cannot come in contact with dead body. If they did, but they're not allowed to add extra impurity on themselves, we mentioned before, because that's called pedigree. They have a certain pedigree, right? Even if they can't get fixed up today, it doesn't matter. But they have a certain pedigree. A Jew, 100% has to be buried in the ground. No mausoleums. Because the Torah says, probably non-Jew also, right, to a certain extent, because the Torah says that when Adam and Eve eat from the tree of knowledge, the Torah says clear that what? That you came from the dust, you go back to the dust. Right? Now, what does that mean? That means that you have to go into the ground. That means you can't be buried in layers, right? Like one on top of the other without going into the ground. Has to go into the ground. Now, you're going to say, what about a casket? Okay. Right? So Jewish tradition is you go in a pine box. Right? Not like, I don't know, the Japanese or Chinese, they give you, they put in credit cards and cars, so they think they're going to use them in the next world. It sounds pretty silly. Okay, but a Jew has to be buried, in a very simple coffin. They go straight in the ground. Straight in the ground because, that's the easiest thing that disintegrates, and then the worms eat you and all kinds of fun. Right? All kinds of fun. But you have to go back into the ground. Right? That certainly applies. 100% applies to a Jew. Now, here in Israel, it's a little more graphic. Why? Because here in Israel, what they do is, they take you on a stretcher. They bring you they dig a hole. They put stones, at the bottom of the hole going around, I guess, in a square or I guess a rectangle, I guess. And they put some slabs there and they stick the body straight on top of it. They have the body like in a bag. You can't see the body, right? You can't see the body. The body's all wrapped up. And the body gets put in straight into the ground. Outside of Israel, okay, you're in a box. You go into the ground. The box is going to disintegrate, right? Box normally will disintegrate, and the body will disintegrate. Here in Israel, it's pretty graphic, right? You see the body goes straight into the hole. No coffin. The body's just wrapped up. You can't see it. But it's, it's pretty graphic. A person on the spot is going to think of their own mortality. They're going to think it's going to happen to them also. If God forbid they slip or whatever, the person gets dumped. I mean, it gets slapped down straight into the hole. So those are basic, cemetery customs. Again, whether in Israel, anywhere else, a Jew goes to cemetery, they visit a loved one, whatever the case is. They, they'll wash their hands when they come out. They should wash their hands. There is a custom also putting a rock or some rocks on the grave as a, the sign that you were there, whatever. Otherwise, those are the general, general customs. A non-Jew, not buried in a Jewish cemetery. Not only that, I think I mentioned a while ago that Jews who kept Shabbos should not be buried next to Jews that didn't keep Shabbos. Or let's say better, Jews that didn't keep Shabbos should not be buried next to Jews that keep Shabbos. Why? Because there are 4 different levels of corporal punishment. Talmud says, Skila, Sreifa, Hereg, and Hennig. Skila, the most severe, get thrown off a 3-story building, right? From your waist. If that doesn't kill you, take a big rock, aim for your heart. You know what they say, if the left one doesn't get you, the right one will. Right? So a person's surely going to die. Right? What's Skila for? Desecration of Shabbos on purpose, homosexuality, all the good ones. Then you get Sreifa. They would open your mouth, stick molten lead down your throat. That'll certainly destroy your insides. Right? Adultery, among other things for that. Then you have Hereg and Hennig. Hereg, you get your head chopped off. Hennig, you get choked to death. Now, since the most severe of punishments, corporal punishment is what? Is skila, right? We mentioned skila, right? Is being stoned, thrown off a 3-story building. Now, that being the case, someone who had sreifa, a lower form of corporal punishment, they do not get buried in the same place. The Talmud says it's embarrassment for someone of a less corporal punishment to be buried next to someone who had a greater corporal punishment. So too, someone who desecrated Shabbos, didn't keep many mitzvahs, is buried now next to someone who kept Shabbos. So it says Mori Rebbe, I remember going to Moshe Stern Sleep, this should be well. When he was in South Africa, he stopped a funeral once that they were burying an unreligious person next to a religious person. And the head of the burial society was also not a religious Jew. So he explained to them that this person's going to get upstairs. This secular Jew is going to get upstairs. And God's going to ask him 2 questions. First two questions are, did you keep my law? Did you keep the Torah? And were you honest to business? Which question comes first? Doesn't matter, but, God's going to say, did you keep Torah? Did you keep any of my mitzvahs? So he says, what do you want from me? I grew up in South Africa. Nobody kept Torah mitzvahs in South Africa. What do you want from me over here? So what's God going to say? God's going to say, wait a minute. Look at your friend buried next to you. Your friend buried next to you. He kept Shabbos. He kept Torah mitzvahs. How can you say you couldn't keep it? He kept it. This other person kept it. So Rabbi said, this guy's going to get totally embarrassed. Totally embarrassed. It's going to be worse for him. He said, I'm trying to make it easier. Bury him somewhere else. You can bury him in the Jewish cemetery. Just don't bury him near someone who kept Shabbos. So the newspapers, the radio, they made a whole big fuss. They said he hates non-religious people. When they're alive, he hates them worse when they're dead. And he had to make a special, he gave a special class, special meeting in the synagogue there to say, why he did what he did. What was behind it. And eventually, the head of the burial society agreed. And that's what they started to do. But he said, I'm trying to help you here. Because that person's going to get upstairs after 120 years. What's he going to say? I couldn't keep Shabbos. What do you want? I grew up in the middle of nowhere, South Africa. Yeah, but what about this guy who kept Shabbos? So what's your answer? Is there any greater embarrassment than that? I don't know. Not too much greater embarrassment. So, if a Jew married to a non-Jew cannot be married, cannot be buried in a Jewish cemetery. Not allowed to be buried in a Jewish cemetery. Right? It's another thing. Total another thing. Right? So, there are places in Jewish cemeteries for people who kept Torah mitzvahs and people didn't. There's good reason. Right? So in short, that's what I would say about what other cemetery laws are there? Oh, if a person goes to a funeral and they're wearing tzitzis, they shouldn't wear them out. They should wear tzitzis inside. Why? They should tuck their tzitzis in because the dead person can't do mitzvahs now. It's like you're showing them up. If they say, I'm still alive, I can do mitzvahs, you can't. Like, nah. Like, I can't do mitzvahs. Like, you can't do mitzvahs over here, so you tuck in your tzitzis, so they can't see them. Anything else? There are different customs. When you put up the gravestone, some do it after the first month, within 6 months, within a year. That different customs like that. I'm trying to think any other customs I can think of. I don't know. I think that's about it. Somebody asks, restore judges as of old. That's right. Can a Jew protect your secular laws? Can a Jew practice secular laws? The secular laws conflate with the Torah. Probably mean go against the Torah, right? For example, corporal lawyers dealing with terms and conditions. If it doesn't go against Torah. A person, let's say, for example, a person can set up a living will. They can set up a living will that goes according to halacha. Right? If it goes against halacha, that's a problem. Right? If a person does, let's say, business practices, and they write it up in a contract, I'll give an example. Someone borrows a lot of money. Someone borrows a lot of money from a Jew. Start up business. And this Jew gives you $50,000, $100,000, start up this business. Right? So what does he do? He says, fine, I'll lend you $100,000, but you're going to pay me back over time $115,000. That you can't do. Why can't you do that? That's taking interest. A Jew's not allowed to lend money to another Jew with interest. A non-Jew, you could. And a non-Jew could lend a Jew with interest. It's not a problem. A Jew for a Jew, no. You have to lend them without interest. So a person who writes up such a contract, the person who wrote the contract transgresses. Witnesses on the contract transgress. People in the contract transgress. Everybody transgresses. Everybody transgresses over here. So if it goes against the Torah, even let's say according to secular law, it's permissible. So what would I say? Who cares if it's permissible? If it's forbidden against the Torah, I'm not allowed to do it. Right? Charging with interest, ribbis, is a huge problem. Now, according to the world, it makes perfect sense. Why shouldn't I have to pay back money? Why should I have to pay back more money than they're giving me money. They're allowing me to use the money in order, for whatever I need, whatever it is. So they're lending me this money, however much it is. Don't they deserve more money back? They're losing money here. They're losing $100, $1,000, whatever it is. So let them make a profit. Why should I lose out on this? Why did I give it for free? Why would I give it for free? Right? That's the way of the world. Someone lends money, get more money back. Why should it be equal amount? unless you're a martyr. Someone could be a martyr. They could be, right, in the secular world. But why would anyone do that? That is the way of the world. So if they set it up that way, everybody transgresses. It's a very, very severe prohibition for a Jew. Very, very severe prohibition. You tell me it's the way of the world. Everybody does it. So that's the way it works in the corporal world. Well, too bad. You're a Jew. You can't do it. Forbidden. Very, very serious prohibition. Right? So if secular law goes against Torah law, you go according to Torah law. You have to go according to Torah law. Now, let's say when it comes to taxes, and there's a legal loophole. A legal loophole means it's legal. If it's an illegal loophole, that's forbidden, right? That's stealing, obviously. But if it's legal, am I allowed to do it? That's a moral issue. But if it's legal, why can't I do it? It's on the books. It could be a moral issue, maybe. But if it's a legal loophole, it's legal. Everybody uses it. Everyone does it. No one's gone to jail. It's not going to change. Shouldn't be an issue. If it's something forbidden, okay. Right? Something forbidden, we got to be careful. That's for sure we have to be careful. And when it comes to business in general, I'm just going to throw this out there. When it comes to business in general, there are plenty of Jews. What are the first laws they learn? They don't have that much time to learn. What are they going to learn? Right? They learn the laws of Shabbos. Right? They learn, they learn Gemara, they learn the laws of Shabbos, they learn maybe some other things. But most likely they're not going to learn the laws of business. The laws of business, the vast majority of these laws are Torah prohibitions. Almost across the board. Torah prohibitions. Most of the laws of Shabbos, now, laws of Shabbos come up every week. Blessings come up every day. Right? A lot of these laws are rabbinical. Now, I'm not saying, Torah prohibition, rabbinical. You have to know how to keep Shabbos as a Jew. No question. Right? You have to know what to do. At the same time, even if you have to know what to do, so if you're in business, how can you not learn business law? There are many, many things you have to learn. Right? We'll take Noahites. We'll throw them under the bus also. They want to, there are a bunch of Noahites out there want to learn all kinds of things that do not apply to them. It's interesting. It's esoteric, but it doesn't apply to them. And there are so many laws they don't know that even do apply to them. Many, many things they don't know. And even if it doesn't apply, let's say it's a moral imperative. Kaufman's law. A lot of these things are moral imperatives, even if they don't apply. So why don't they focus on that? Because I'd rather learn things. If I were to say, Kabbalah is forbidden. No one's allowed to learn Kabbalah. What's the first thing people are going to do? Want to learn Kabbalah. Right? If I say, I'll bring a whole bunch of footnotes and I'll say, look over there. No one's going to look. But if I were to say, whatever you do, here are a bunch of footnotes, never look. You don't even want to look. You don't even want to know what's over there. And everyone's going to look. Right? I see this all the time. People learning things that have nothing to do with anything for them. Nothing. So while they do it, it's Kabbalah, it's this, it's that. I want to learn Gemara. Does Gemara apply to you? Now, there are certain parts of tractates that might apply to non-Jews. Right? Might apply to Noahites in the laws of damage. They might be able to learn certain things. Obviously not in depth as a Jew. Right? But they may be allowed to learn certain things. I think if I would ask my Rebbe, just growl at me. But I think there is room for them to learn certain things that apply to them because they have to know about laws. They have to set up law courts. Right? So they have to know what to do. They have to know what it means to steal and how much, and if you need witnesses or not, and all that. They have to know. So these things apply. So why don't they learn things that apply? Why are they too busy learning a million other things that don't apply? A lot more fun. It's a lot more interesting. Right? That's why King Solomon says, Maim genuvim yintaku. Stolen waters are always the sweetest. Right? If you tell someone you can't have something, that's exactly what they want. So, at the end of the day, they also have to know what to do. They have to know what to do according to their own laws. What to learn. Plenty for them what to learn. And not a shortage. Kaufman always says, I keep people busy next 250 years. Plenty what to learn, but they only want to learn things that are forbidden. Right? It boggles the mind. I mean, I do understand. I understand the philosophical background. I get it, but
hey, Rabbi,
things that don't apply, don't apply.
Hey, Rabbi.
Right? And if they don't apply and they don't have an effect, why do you want to learn it? Same thing by conscience. People think, I'm going to eat clean animals. They're not doing clean, not clean. There's plenty of kosher food that's high in cholesterol will kill you, right? High in sugar and all that. But if you're talking about eating meats or eating chicken, it doesn't apply to a non-Jew. So why do you want to do it? Why would a person want to do it? It's going to purify my soul, but it doesn't affect your soul. Right? According to Kabbalah, it doesn't affect your soul at all. None. Doesn't do anything. Right? As the Kli Yakar says. And a non-Jew is not going to keep anything if they have no benefit. They say, but I do have a benefit. Okay, he's telling you not. Right? Doesn't affect your soul. Fine. Right? That's the claim. So, if that's true, all these other things as well. I'd say the same thing. If it doesn't apply, well, why do it? Because I want to learn about it. I want this. I want that. A person has to stay within their boundaries. They have to stay to what's permissible and what's not permissible. There are women out there who have to learn Gemara. Some of them are not feminists. Majority are. But let's say, many of them are feminists. Now, the Talmud states clear. We're not going to pull any punches here. The Talmud states clear, a woman will never find her potential. She'll never find her potential by doing this. It's not a good thing for a number of reasons. It has nothing to do with brainwaves. It has nothing to do with her being inferior at all. Plenty of women that have probably better analytical minds than men do. But that's not the reason. So now, what would be the obvious question? What would be Kaufman's obvious question? Kaufman's obvious question would be, you know what? The Talmud says it's not good for you. You're not going to reach your potential this way. So why do you want to do it? You can say, so explain to me what that piece of Talmud means. What does that mean? The rabbis know. You want to learn it. The rabbis say it's not good for you. It's not healthy for you. You're not going to find potential there. So why do you want to do it? So someone will say, but I'm not doing it to be a feminist. I've had people like this. I enjoy it, blah, blah, blah. Plenty of non-Jews out there, that they like to learn also. They get the, stimulation, the give and take. But I want to tell you a fundamental principle. Torah cannot be learned without someone teaching it. Let's go ask the Christians. They don't know how to learn a lick. All they know how to do is misquote, right? Because they don't have oral law. Maybe they have their own oral law, whatever it is. Doesn't really matter. But you have to learn from somebody who knows how to learn. And I see it time and time again. It's the blind leading the blind, right? Giving over this, giving over that, when I guarantee they don't have a clue what they're talking about. None. They can talk a good game. It doesn't matter. And so what? Why do they want to learn it? Intellectual stimulation. If you were telling me you're learning things that apply to you, you're learning the laws of damages in a number of places where Talmud brings down that applies to non-Jews, or you're learning the Noahide laws and you're learning the appropriate sources. That I could hear. That 100% I could hear. But if that's not the case, what are you learning blessings for? I'm going to learn Tractate Brachot. That's beautiful. A lot of Agadas, a lot of homiletic stories, a lot of it very practical when it comes to Jewish law, making blessings and what I make blessings on and food and this and that. How does that apply to a non-Jew? The Noahide laws do not apply making blessings. It doesn't. Now I want to learn Eruvin, one of the more difficult tractates of Talmud. Does an Eruv apply to you? Doesn't apply. So why do you want to do it? Right? It's gone too far, way too far. If you want to learn what applies to you, I get it. But you got to really convince me why these other things that would never apply in a million years, why it should be done. Right? So here, dealing with terms and conditions, back to that, has to be something that doesn't go against Torah. If it goes against Torah, I don't care what the lawyers say or do. I don't care what the law says. If it's forbidden according to Torah, you can't do it. Right? It's forbidden. Someone asks, what do you do? What does a Jew do? Or a non-Jew, as is with a non-Jew also, or a JIT. They find out that there's someone selling unkosher food. You call them on it. And if it's got rabbinic supervision, there's a problem. You have to call it. You have to call it in, right? You have to know 100%. You have to know 100% is what's going on. And if that's what's going on, then yeah, because they're misleading people. Can't allow them to mislead people, right? That's forbidden. They're dressing up something as being kosher when it's not. So how can they do that? It's forbidden. Has to be called in. Like I said, in my own case, I called it in. I just didn't call it in far enough for a different reason. I didn't take it as far as I should have. I should have, right? But it has to be called in because if someone's misleading other people, they're frauds. Not only that, they're giving people unkosher food. That's a big problem. That's a huge problem. Someone asked earlier, if a pregnant woman, if she converts, the child will be Jewish. If she converts before the child is born, then the child 100% is Jewish. Then the child is Jewish. If, let's say, she doesn't convert before she gives birth, then then at a certain point they can convert the child. But the rabbinical court's only going to convert the child if they see it's in the best interest of the child. In other words, if the rabbinical court sees that they're not going to raise the child in a Jewish way, not send to a Jewish school and all that, then they're not going to convert them. It's not a benefit over here. If the child is already Jewish, one thing, right? The woman converts, the child's Jewish, and then she goes to the mikveh, that's fine. It's not an issue. If it's after the fact, then it's a whole question, right? If it's in the benefit of the child, they'll convert the child. If not, then, then the child has to decide on their own, right? If they're being raised as a Jew, and they're going to go to Jewish schools and all that, so it's a benefit. If that wouldn't be the case, it'd be a problem, right? That's why, and I've gotten this question a number of times, if a person's married and the spouse doesn't want to go in the same direction as the other, right? One wants to convert, the other doesn't. So then they can't convert. They both have to be on the same page. How can it be someone keeps Shabbos, the other one doesn't? Someone keeps kosher, the other one doesn't. Problematic in a lot of different ways. Right now, I'm not saying someone has to get divorced necessarily because of it, unless there are other issues, which I would never tell people to get divorced. I've spoken about this a number of times. Right? But in the end, if you're not on the same page, then yeah, you're not going to convert. Unless you get divorced or you're not with this person anymore. Right? That's the only way it works. So that's what I would say about that. Are all Jews and even non-Jews subjected to the beatings of the graves? Yeah, that's a good question. There's a thing called what do you call it? Beating of the grave. Does that apply to non-Jews? I don't think so. That doesn't apply to non-Jews. Would it apply? How far does it go? Not 100% sure. Not 100% sure whether it's only by Rishonim, it's only by evil people, or what specific things. That I have to double check. That I'm not sure. It doesn't. I don't think it applies to a non-Jew. It certainly shouldn't apply to a non-Jew. Someone there mentions they know of a Jew learning or a non-Jew, learning halacha on their own and accusing Rabbanim basins of abuse. Yeah, there is a problem there is a problem where, a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. That's what I always say. It's a dangerous thing because people might be well-meaning. I'm not going to say people are like outrightly evil. They might be well-meaning, but I think people are tremendously misguided. I know someone, thank God they weren't one of my students, but once they eventually converted, they lambasted, on social media, base stands and rabbis and this and that. And the person caught an attitude, a total attitude. And whatever, the person learns and does whatever, but for goodness sakes, you're on the outside looking in. The system is not perfect. We've never said it's perfect. At the same time, you're on the outside coming in. You're not, you don't have a right over here just to say all kinds of things. But this is worse. This is worse where someone, is going to quote Jewish law and then, accuse rabbis of this, that, and the other thing. I've seen people do it. I'm not going to say I haven't seen people do it. I've definitely seen people do it. And, I did make one of my Ask the Rabbis was somebody did that. He butchered every Hebrew word. He quoted something that wasn't true. I mean, he quoted the Shulchan Aruch, okay? But but obviously he couldn't learn what it really meant. And if he would have ever lived in a Jewish community, he never would have made such a statement. Because that wasn't the case. Because the statement was, Jewish women, single or not, or married, cover their hair. Now, if you ever lived in a Jewish community, no single woman covers their hair. Nobody. Maybe in Yemen, because they'll cover their hair so they won't get raped or whatever to show that they're married. One thing. But in any Jewish community, I've lived in a lot of them. Modern Orthodox, Ultra Orthodox, all the way around. Never seen any single woman cover their hair. Ever. Except at their wedding. Not everyone covers their hair at the wedding also. The bride. Whatever the case is. So this person makes a statement. Okay, I can also read it. But he didn't see what the commentary is saying. He sounded like a fool. And I called him out on it. First of all, I butchered every Hebrew word. That's a dead giveaway. But even without butchering every Hebrew word, doesn't everybody know? I mean, you find out now. Doesn't everybody know no single women cover their hair? Single women! Not married women that were divorced or widowed. Single women. I'm going to spell that out for anybody. Single. Single. They're not covering their hair. That is not what the halacha is. That's what the Machaber says. That's what the Code of Jewish Law says. That's true. But he's talking about a specific case, the commentaries say. Because the obvious case, that's not the case. That's not what we hold. And I know that's not what we hold even without looking at what the commentaries say. You know how I know that? Because I've lived in Jewish communities. This bozo never lived in a Jewish community. And if you never lived in a Jewish community, why are you giving a halacha class? Why are you giving a class in Code of Jewish Law? Keep your big mouth shut and learn. That's what I would say. You don't have a right to speak. You want to give a class, know your material. Know it backwards and forwards. But don't say something stupid and then have me call you out. You don't want that. You definitely don't want that. Right? But if you want to learn it right. Learn it from people who know. And if you're not sure, you have to ask. That's what we said before. Even if you think it's the same and ask somebody. Don't make a video in Jewish law, and butcher every Hebrew word and then sound like a fool. Because you sound like a fool. You absolutely sound like a fool. Right? So, learning halacha, there's a lot of good things you get online, but it's not the same as having a teacher. It's not the same. There are things that are more obvious, less obvious. But again, if you're going to quote something, you better know what you're quoting, especially if you're making a video. Right? I would say, why are you wasting your time making videos over here? Who cares what you have to say? I don't care what you have to say. You should be sitting and learning. You want to convert, sit and learn. Why are you wasting time making videos? Let other people make videos. You want to spend 20 minutes a day. You have 2 hours to learn. 20 minutes a day, you want to be on social media doing Jewish outreach. Very good. That's it. 20 minutes. I'll give you 20 minutes. The rest of the time, you should be learning, not wasting your time. Someone asked, In Corporal, how do we imagine God? How do we imagine God? Good question. God doesn't have a hand. The Torah says that he's got an outstretched arm. The Torah says that he's got, he's got a mighty arm, mighty hand, whatever it is, right? Just for us to sort of get some sort of a picture. But we don't look at God as an old man sitting on a throne. God is everywhere. God is infinite. We can only describe what God is not. But we do use anthropomorphisms of God, at least to give us a little bit of an understanding. A little bit. Right? It doesn't do it justice. So how do we imagine God? We don't. You want to imagine God speaking through a cloud? Okay. Through a big wind? I don't know. We can't imagine what God is. So I would say don't even imagine. You just think God is a general thing. Right? But God cannot be confined to space and time. Right? God is not limited. So if you're not limited, it can outrun a black hole. If you're not limited, it can be here, it can be there, it can be everywhere. It can be hiding behind the rock. Boom! You're right, it can be anywhere. So we can imagine what he isn't. We can only talk about what he isn't. That's what I would say. No, I don't think there's any other way I can put it than that. I can't speak enough. And I'm gonna speak about this later. My Noahide class, but people take terms totally out of context. Even by Noahides, take them totally out of context. And they butcher them. If they see it says here like this, what must mean this? But it's so convoluted, it doesn't make sense. It totally doesn't make sense. So, a person who wants to be out there, they want to teach and this and that. First, learn what you need to learn. First, you have to have a little bit of humility. I'm not a firm believer, and people can disagree, that even a person knows one thing, they should be out teaching it. I don't know. I don't know if that's true. In the outreach world, they may say that's true. I'm not a firm believer in that. Because people can look really stupid and not know what they're doing, not know what they're talking about. If they know, just teach one thing that that you understand and just give it over to someone else. Okay, I understand that, there's a need to do outreach. I understand all that, right? But you have to have a certain level of knowledge, What another one of my pet peeves is probably the same pet peeve is people who talk a good game. They don't know anything. They know very little, and they cause damage to themselves. They cause damage to others. They cause other people to go astray. That's what they do. I heard Rabbi Yaron speaking. Someone sent me a video about him speaking about Asher Mesa. So I'm not even gonna. All right, I quoted him. And whatever he made a comment. Comparing Purim to Halloween. I mean, I understood what he meant, but it was a pretty bad comparison. It's like, yeah, they have Halloween and it's pagan, and we dress up on Purim, similar thing. No, it's not similar. It's totally not similar, but okay. So anyway, Rabbi Yaron was saying, like, he had someone listening to his classes for a long time. He decided to listen to some people on his blacklist. One of them was him. 7 months, this guy listened to his classes. 7 months, he was listening to Asher Mesa. So Rabbi Yaron said, I only listened to a short part of it, but he said, I don't know if I can fix this guy. I don't know if I can fix him because of all the garbage this guy was spewing. You listen to someone that's cracked, you will come out cracked. That's not a threat. That's not a curse. I'm not cursing anyone. That's a promise. That's what's going to happen. If you listen to garbage, you'll end up in the garbage. You listen to the real deal. So you might not be the real deal, but at least you're getting the right information. Even if it's a little bit harsh, even if it's something, a person can't take, whatever, but you're getting the real information. You want to tell me, you want to compare Halloween and paganism to Purim? Aren't they like opposite ends of the spectrum? Purim is a day like Yom Kippur. It's got the potential of Yom Kippur, total opposite extreme. Because, we're partying, we're drinking, we're saying words of Torah. What are we doing on Yom Kippur? We're fasting. we're repenting, we're beating our chest 100 times for all the sins we've done. Total opposite ends of the spectrum. But you know what? Purim has that potential. It has that potential like Yom Kippur. You want to tell me you're going to dress up on Purim and whatever that means, and you're going to compare it to Halloween? Do you have a screw loose? Are you normal? No, you're not normal. You're an idiot. How in the world can you? I can understand a small fraction of me. A very small fraction of me can understand the comparison. But what are you comparing? You're comparing one of the holiest days of the year, one of the craziest days also. One of the holiest days of the year to a pagan holiday? That's what you're comparing it to? It doesn't make any sense, right? And someone who backs him went to a monster mash, what do you call it? Drive-in movie on Shabbos in the Strymel, in a Bekisher, dressed up in the Hasidic levush, looking like a Hasidic Jew, desecrating Shabbos to go to a drive-in theater to watch monster movies. Where's the brains? And why are you bragging about that? Why in the world are you bragging about that? Yeah, I know people will be upset by this video. Of course they'll be upset because you're a wacko. I'm going to call you out as a wacko. You're sitting there bragging you desecrated Shabbos to go to a drive-in to watch monster movies. And you ate cholent. You ate cholent with your Strymel on Shabbos in your car watching a monster movie. This doesn't make any sense at all. And you want to call me out and say, I'm the real deal and I don't convert anyone and I don't have my own rabbinical court? Do me a favor. Learn how to learn. Keep Shabbos properly. Don't in the world tell me and sit there and brag. You're sitting there bragging. It's just as bad. And I'm going to throw this out there also. I'm on this rant. People sit out there, and, they have these pride parades. Like, we're doing the worst abomination that the Torah says, skila, right? To be thrown off a 3-story building if there was a temple in Jerusalem. And you're sitting there bragging. You're sitting there bragging. Yeah, this is what we do and we don't care. And this is who we are and it's okay. No, the Bible says it's not okay, right? Like someone came to my Rebbe once after he gave class and said there was going to be one of these parades. Going to walk right by the yeshiva. He said, what should we do? He goes, so my Rebbe said, you think I'm bad? My Rebbe said, it says coming by the yeshiva, what you should do? I don't think you should be holding out lollipops. Right? My language, you ain't getting up Tootsie Rolls. I don't know if they still exist. You ain't giving out lollipops. What, you stupid? You're going to sit there and give out, oh, here you go. Here's another. Here's another. You go, you're going to be out there protesting. Sit out there and learn. Say to him, do something. Don't provoke. You're not allowed to provoke. But if they go by, you can't say it's okay. You can't sit there and hand out ice cream, giving out hot dogs. That's ludicrous. Ludicrous. And they're going to do that in the palace of the king. And they're going to sit there and brag. It's unbelievable. So now someone says, how do I know living in the Messianic era? You know how I know? Because chutzpah. Chutzpah yazka. The Gemara says, chutzpah is going to run wild. I don't think there's any greater chutzpah than that. We're doing the biggest abomination according to the Bible. We're going to brag about it. Right? I'm going to dress in my Hasidic levush, which I don't have. Right? And I'm going to go to a monster mass on Shabbos. That's a great Shabbos. You're going to brag about that on social media? I'm a Hasidic Rebbe. No, you're not. You're going to get severely punished. God's going to deal with you. He doesn't need me to say it. But what do you brag? It's one thing, fine. It's one thing I can understand. You keep it hush-hush. You don't say anything about it. You keep it quiet. You put it on social media? Are you out of your mind? You out of your cotton-picking head? How can you brag? I did the worst abomination in the world. What are you going to say? I raped 4 girls. I'm going to put it on social media. Here we go. I'm going to show everybody what I did. You got a screw loose somewhere. That doesn't make any sense. Except for the fact there is a silver lining. You know what the silver lining is? We're definitely in the Messianic era. We're real close. So the Messiah will come. Like, how much worse can it get? I don't even want to go there. How much worse can it get? So I heard Rabbi Mizrahi say once, yeah, you think it's bad, these parades? They're going to bring animals also one day. Come on, bring your cow, bring your doggy, who knows what. Anything goes. Anything goes in this world. Oh, but can't say anything about it. Oh, that's being homophobic. That's being, Torah says it's forbidden. That's it. And I would care a lot less. And I wouldn't make such a big deal and yell and scream and all this, about it. If people just kept their mouths shut. If they didn't brag about why are you bragging about it? Why in the world are you bragging about it? And then you want to say, well, I know better than everyone else, and I'm going to downgrade every rabbi out there. You know what the punishment is? You have any idea? That the Gemara says, Miu Abikoris. Who's considered a heretic? Someone who says, oh, what do we need these rabbis for? They say, oh, they're not doing anything for the world. So they're not saying they're not doing anything for the world. What are they saying? Oh, they're wrong. Oh, they're misguided. Oh, they're this. Oh, Rabbi Kiva, come on. He was, different generation. Oh, this one, that. I do not want to stand by that person when they get struck by lightning or whatever's going to happen. Like, there are certain things. There are certain things that are just well below the belt. Well below the belt. Now, I would think some things are obvious, but they're not. And there are people that don't have any problem, saying certain things that, like someone will say, I know the Orthodox are going to be, upset with me. But listen, a 3-year-old boy playing with dolls, I knew it was going to happen. So what, do you think it's his fault? No, it's my fault. He was born in a girl's body, maybe. Right? Maybe he's got certain tendencies. Don't we all have tendencies? Don't we all have bad tendencies? Anger tendencies, miserly tendencies, cursing tendencies. We all have bad tendencies. Who says I have to act on it? Who says I'm allowed to act? No, I know people are going to get upset. I know people are going to get upset. You know why? Because they're going to say, what do you do with this verse in Leviticus chapter 18? But it's not their fault. Whose fault is it? Whose fault is it? There are psychologists that can help people, with this. So people have weird desires. Okay. So Torah says it's forbidden. But you can't just whitewash it. You can't whitewash it and say, I know the Orthodox are going to be very upset with me. Say, you're right, because it's heresy. That's heresy. It's like you're taking this verse and saying, no, it's out of context. It doesn't apply to certain people. Really? What do you mean it doesn't apply to certain people? They were born a certain way. I was born a lot of different ways. I got a lot of bad genes. A lot of bad genes. God says, yeah, I put them there. I want you to overcome them. So I don't want you to act on them. So why am I going to get punished? You put them there. So who cares if I act on it? Who cares if I do this? Who cares if I do that? And I do that because you're liable. You're not allowed to act on it. Getting angry is forbidden. Right? Terrible things are spoken about. People get angry. And people who curse. People do all kinds of things. So if someone's going to say, but I have, the doctor once told me, they're going to prove, and they've already shown that someone's homosexual, they have a certain gene. Okay, I have a lot of bad genes. Tremendous amount of bad genes. Doesn't mean I don't have empathy for these people. Doesn't mean that, right? But we can't whitewash it. We can't push it under the rug and say it's okay. It's not okay, right? It's totally forbidden. Most severe of all punishments. But to sit there and brag about it, and then say, well, what could you expect from them? Oh, nothing. I don't expect anything from anybody. No one should do anything. Forget Torah, forget mitzvah, forget everything. Nah, it's a free-for-all. That's what this world is. Doesn't make any sense. It's just making people feel better by saying it's not your fault. Well, we are responsible for our actions. We all have tendencies. Some of them better, some of them worse. Some of them we do to ourselves. Some of them we're born with. Right? Some of them go out of control. They can. Question is what we do. Question is how we react. But we can't say, well, it's not his fault. I don't want to laugh. I shouldn't be laughing. Right? It just sounds silly. This person did X, Y, and Z. But it's not his fault. Well, whose fault is it? This person was an axe murderer. It's not his fault. He came from a broken home. Okay. There are a lot of people come from bad homes. Does that mean everyone's an axe murderer? Put on my Jason mask? Right? Is that what it means? Not what it means. You have certain disposition now. You 100% have a certain disposition because you grew up in a messed up way. True. That's 100% true. Right? But there are a lot of people who grew up in messed up families that they're not axe murderers. And they don't do other things. They might have a certain disposition, but so what? these dispositions can be overcome. Not all of them, right? It's hard. They're not going to say no, but we can't make excuses, right? And anyone who's going to say it's not their fault, well, that's heresy. Doesn't matter what they were doing at 3 years old, 4 years old, this, that, right? Something could happen later, et cetera. There are a lot of things that could happen. That may all be true, right? That doesn't exempt the person. That means they may go through trauma. There may be other things. There are a lot of things that can happen, right? But we have to take responsibility for ourselves as well. Even though, let's say something happened against our will, it's not our fault. We didn't ask for it, right? The question is how we deal with it, right? But if someone, it's not even that. Someone says, yeah, that's who I am. That's my lifestyle. And not only that, I'm going to brag about it. For ourselves, we have to know what's right, what's wrong. And even if we do things wrong, I don't see too many people bragging, on social media and saying, how great they are because they get angry. And look at what this, they punched holes in walls and they did this and they did that. And they're sitting bragging about bad character traits. I mean, maybe some people will. The vast majority are not going to do that. But so why are they doing that over here? Because they want people to say what you do is okay. They want to justify what they do, and they want you to say you can't say anything about it, and we have a lot of power and all that. But why are you bragging about it? It's not a normal thing. Everyone will tell you it's not a normal thing, right? Some people may say, no, it is, and you're born with it, and this and that, right? If we hold according to the Torah, it's not a normal thing. The Torah doesn't say, husband cleave to someone of his own sex. It says cleave to his wife. And they're forbidden relationships. In Leviticus Chapter 18, we'll get there one day. We'll speak more about it. Okay. But I have to sit there and brag about it. I have to, person has to sit there and brag to desecrate Shabbos. I mean, it's ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. The point is that we should be embarrassed. Any bad character trait we have, we should be embarrassed. We should hide it as much as possible. We don't want people to see our bad traits, even though people may see it anyway. We don't want that, right? We should have a little, a certain level of humility. See, but here anything goes. This is the world we live in today. Everything goes. So you can't say, well, this is bad and this one's wrong. That's your opinion. You're right. Right. It's my opinion according to what the Torah says. Torah says it's wrong. But to brag about it, to say all the terrible things they do and brag, that's a bit much. That's a bit much. It just doesn't make sense. Right? Totally doesn't make sense.
Can you hear me, Rabbi?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
So earlier you was talking about, Noahide teachers and
right.
fake rabbis and whatnot.
Right.
But as the Noahide movement grows, of course, everybody and their brother wants to be hosting a podcast or whatever.
Right.
So what obligation do we have as Noahides to call these people out, report on whatever we need to do when we encounter them with their.
You have every obligation if what they're saying isn't true.
Yeah.
Right. In other words, it's not a problem with Lashon Hara for the sole reason that they're misleading people. Right. If they're misleading people. Now, there was a whole war on Facebook a couple of years ago. And all the people did was just call out people and call people names and say they couldn't learn, call the Rabbi Singer, Rabbi Skobag. They wouldn't know how to learn if their life depended on it, called me out, and I gave them a golden opportunity. My golden opportunity was, everybody knows who my credentials are. My Rebbe will still vouch for me, 25 years, we're still pretty tight. I said, I'm going to give you a golden opportunity on Facebook. You tell me who your credentials are. Show me. Show everybody here. Everybody wants to know. Show me. And he said, you're a wacko, you're this, and that was it. Call me names, and that was it. So I think people should be called out. It depends what it is. If it's something egregious, they're totally misleading people. And they're saying, well, according to Noahide laws, homosexuality is okay. No, it's not. That's forbidden. Death penalty. It's a form of immorality. If someone's going to say that's okay, that's not okay. It depends. It depends what it is. But the problem is that you're not talking with rational people. That's really part of the issue, because at the end of the day, what I've seen, and the Talmud states clear, is that you can't learn under a rabbi unless in your eyes he looks like an angel. Now, it doesn't mean he's perfect by any stretch. But if someone starts calling people names, they start calling people out, they say you can't learn and you're this and you're that and you're the other thing. So people say, oh, how can that person be a rabbi? No, it's got bad character traits. It can have knowledge. It can have a certain level of knowledge, but you have to know what it is. And a lot of these people just they don't care. You have an obligation to warn others that what they're teaching isn't true. Would I call these other people out? No, it's a waste of time. We did it a while ago. I signed a letter. 6 of us signed a letter against a few people for stuff that they were doing. We're called the Rogue 6 or Rogue 7 or 8 or whatever it was. But these people are not rational. It's not like you're having a normal conversation. Calling them out is a waste of time, right? But to warn other people that these teachings are dangerous, that you're obligated to do, right? What Rabbi Yaron does and what Rabbi Mizrahi does to call people out, they're obligated to do that. They're 100% obligated to do that, to make sure people don't go astray, and people don't listen to people that they shouldn't listen to, right? I'll go that far when I have to. I'm not going to do it every class I give, but if it needs to be, then people cannot be misled, and that's, I think, one of the single greatest problems in the Noahide movement today is exactly that. Is that there's just a lot of people doing a lot of different things, and it's chaos. And the few people trying to do the right thing are getting squashed, and not enough of the good materials getting out there, right? So so I guess the short answer is that if people are doing things wrong, you can certainly warn people against it. There's nothing wrong with that. You just should be prepared that they may come back to you, and say, oh, who are you to say this, and what do you know, and blah blah blah, and might start a whole thing, which I wouldn't necessarily say is worth it, but that's not your issue. Your issue is making sure people want to do the right thing, and end up doing the right thing and not be led astray, because that's worse. That is definitely worse, because I think the majority of teachers out there teaching about Noahides are wrong. They're just not they're not teaching what they need to teach, and a lot of them have big egos. They think they know what they're doing. They don't. And they don't. And some of them I've called out. Others I'm just watching what they're doing, but I haven't necessarily called them out. Because I need that, like I need another hole in the head. But yeah, sometimes it needs to be done. 100% it needs to be done. But yeah, you have to do it in a smart way also. But if you contact someone privately and you see that they're following somebody they shouldn't be, yeah, you can tell them. People say, people were claiming also, it was actually pretty funny as well, because people were saying, how can you say this against this round? How can you say, because it's not Lashon Hara, because what they're talking is garbage. So what they're talking goes against what the Torah says. If it goes against what the Torah says, I can't be quiet over here. I mean, I'm not quiet anyway, but in this case, I'd be even less quiet, right? But not everything needs me to jump up and down and yell and scream, and but people have to know. People have to know where the line is drawn. The case I gave was someone, I don't know, wants to convert, I guess maybe in the process of conversion, trying to do Jewish outreach, and they sound like an idiot. There's no reason to sound like an idiot. But you're right. There are a lot of people out there, I would agree. They want to make podcasts. They want to do this. Some of them may have the most altruistic motives. The problem is that they're not giving over the right, information, not giving over the right, Torah view. But the problem is they're not held accountable. That's I think another issue, is that they're not really held. They just say what they want, and they don't think there are any repercussions. And I don't, and part of me, small part of me, doesn't understand when people say things that are really off the charts and off the wall. Why do you think people are going to say something? And not only that, you're like totally like, who are you to say this? Well, let's see. I get sources behind me to say what you're saying is wrong. So, oh, but you don't know how to learn, and you're this and you're that, and they start calling you names. So, okay, that's where it leads to. And that's why it all, a lot of that died down, because these people are no longer around. They're no longer doing it. Some of them are. Some of them are. They're just, I
tell a lot of.
Yeah, go ahead.
I tell a lot of people that the safest venues, the safest outlets, are things like Tanakh Talk or Dan Barwell's podcast things, because with the prophecy of Isaiah, the Torah's got to flow from Jerusalem. So anybody that just facilitates the rabbis doing the teaching is more likely to be a good source than Noahides trying to do the rabbi's job, basically. So that's my advice.
No, but that's the whole point, of what we're trying to do is trying to train others so they can do it, obviously, under our auspices. But you have to ask the question, I think it's a fundamental question, and that is, if someone with minimal knowledge, why are they out there now? Why aren't they learning? Why, why, a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. And that's exactly the reason. I'm all for people wanting to do things and help and spread the word. That's great. You have to know what your limitations are. And the problem is you get so excited, you run with it, and you don't care because ego gets in the way. What? I can't give a class. What I need the rabbis, what I need them. I got my own Talmud set. I got my own Zohar. I can quote from it. I can give my own thing. Now I have my own followers. I'll do my own thing. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Might sound like a lot of fun. The problem is the information you're going to get is skewed. 100%, is skewed. And the hardest thing, I think one of the hardest things, even for a Noahide, is that, in a Jew in training, the same is that they've been lied to by the church. Most people come out of the church. They've been lied to so much by the church. Why should they listen to the rabbis? You're just another guy, right? You're just another guy. Why should I listen to you? Well, we're the closest thing to the source, right? But it's a hard thing to lay themselves down, not to mention the fact that you have a lot of frauds out there that make our job a lot harder, a lot more difficult, because this person says this, and another wacko says something like that, and they're doing all kinds of other things. And then at the end of the day, you're trying to give over information that, like I'm going to give over in this Noahide class later. What's the definition of a Ben Noah? What's the definition of a ger Tosha, right? What is the ger tzedek? What's the ger Tosha? They've butchered this. Butchered. I mean, that's not even the word. There's no source in the Talmud for this. Really? They're about 8, 9. There's no source. Really? Every time it says ger, it means ger Tosha. No, it doesn't. It's in context. Because you're right, a ger is just another Jew, right? It means a Jew, but why does it say ger? Okay, sometimes it means ger, sometimes it means ger Tosha. True. That's very true, but you have to know where, you have to know when, right? And one of the things people say, no, you have to go in front of a rabbinical court. Be a Noahide in front of a rabbinical court. You know what that does? Goose egg. Doesn't do anything. I'm a Noahide, I did in front of a rabbinical court. Ooh, that's unbelievable. That's great. Do I have to do that? No. Does it give me any extra meaning? No. Doesn't do anything. Now I'll give you a certificate. It's even better. I'll give you a Noahide certificate in front of the basement. You stepped in front of the basement, sign the basement. I could use that for toilet paper. It doesn't mean anything. It absolutely doesn't mean anything. So now you can imagine what my Noahide class later is going to be. It's going to be a lot of fun because I've just seen too much. They take one thing and they totally take it out of context, say this is what it always means, and whatever, and it means this, that, and the other thing. But there's no ger Toshav today. We don't have a Yovel cycle, right? We don't have Jubilee year today. We have Shemitah, fine, we have a sabbatical year, but we don't have it. Right? So if we don't have it, then it doesn't exist. Oh, so this person said, yeah, I know it doesn't exist. So why are you teaching it? If you know it doesn't exist, why are you confusing people? Why are you telling people, oh, no, but it means this and it means that? Oh, so you give me Webster's 7th definition. See, I know better. People don't know better. And they I had somebody went to someone's class and I warned them against it. I said, tell me what happens afterwards. The person came back to me. And they said, Rabbi, you're never going to believe what happened. And I was waiting. I said, yeah, what happened? They said, I went in more confused than when I left. Meaning I thought I left more confused than I went in. But I said, of course. They said, I said, you want to know why? I said, I'll tell you, very simple. Very simple, because in order to give over information, you have to understand the information. If you don't understand the information, and then you're quoting things like this, and you're going in opposite directions, then you sound kind of silly, and it doesn't make sense. And that's it. Right? And, and that's what you have. And yeah, there is a serious problem. And I thought when I got involved in the world of conversion, I thought that was bad. Sorry. When I got in the world of Jewish outreach, I spoke about earlier, I thought that was bad. And I saw all kinds of crazy things. I got involved in conversion, multiply that by infinity. get involved with no hides, multiply that infinity plus. You would never think, you just never think that, people are going to abuse certain, certain things. All people say, well, people lie in the name of God all the time and this and that. I'm not saying people are doing it to be egregious, people are doing it because, for whatever reason, they may have altruistic reasons, okay. But even with the biggest of egos, you have to take a step back and you have to say, I don't know. And you have to say, I'm not sure. You have to say, I need to learn. Right? A good example is Asher Mesa. He never spent time in yeshiva. 2 weeks, a month maximum. And now he made thousands and thousands of videos. Why would I take what he says seriously? Why? You don't have any knowledge behind him. None at all. These other people, how much they've learned in this and that, you need to learn from the source. The person wants to learn Talmud. How are you going to learn Talmud if you don't have someone teach you? Doesn't mean you can't read it. You can read it in English, fine. You're not going to understand the nuances. You're not going to, there are a lot of things you're not going to understand. So that's why a person needs a teacher, but don't think I can do it on my own. Right? There was a story one of my rabbis once told me in Cleveland. There was a bunch of priests learning Gemara, learning Talmud. So they stopped one of my rabbis once, and they started talking to him, and then they knew it backwards and forwards. They could tell you verbatim what the Gemara said, the back and forth, this and that. He said, it's just like in the Frisco Kid with the Indian chief, and he says, I read their holy Torah, didn't understand a single word. So he started asking questions, simple questions. Okay, Abai and Rava disagree. What are they disagreeing about? What about this? Does this apply? Not apply? They couldn't answer. They can only repeat it verbatim, but they didn't understand anything. Right? A person get more knowledge, less knowledge. But how can a person learn, especially Kabbalah and other things, if you don't have someone who's teaching you? It doesn't make any sense. But everyone wants to be out there. Anyone can make a podcast, and the crazier it is, the more people are going to watch it. That's the problem. That's the problem. You're 100% right that, not that we're bragging as the rabbis over here, but, you have to get from the proper sources. If you don't get the proper sources, people come out tremendously confused. And it makes perfect sense because it is confusing, right? 100% is confusing. So that, we're trying to eradicate and erase years of abuse of this, and that's what, that was the whole point of this course. That was the whole point that Rabbi Blumenstiel did this course in the first place, right? Is in order to do it properly, right? Did a great job. Doesn't need me to compliment him. Did a tremendous job, going through it. But but that's what's needed. It can't be some fringe elements out there, making their own podcasts and doing their own things, and they sound, they sound kind of crazy, right? That's what I would, but again, it's going to take time. It's not overnight, it's not going to be an overnight thing. But I'm a firm believer. Ray Peterson may disagree, but I'm a firm believer that it can be done if it's done in the right way. And it's going to take time to do it. It's going to take time to re-educate people and all that, but it is going to take time. I don't think there's any question. You need a lot of patience, but a lot of things that that I see, I just like, I would always say, like, how much worse can it get? How much more ludicrous can it get? And I was like, nah, I can't get that much worse. And then I see someone post something. I'm like, really? I'm like, this is the best you got? This is what you're saying? It's hard. It's very disconcerting because, what it does is the people really trying to do good things, they're getting thrown under the bus, and they're getting abused to a certain extent because, they've already have a bad name. They have a bad name before they started, but okay. We got to start somewhere, trying to make inroads. And that's, that's the whole thing. That's why it's crucial, always check A, somebody's credentials, B, who they learned by, and C, hear what they say. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? It doesn't make sense. A person has to do research also. They don't leave their brains open, to the minds fall on the floor. You have to, you have to think as well. But there are a lot of people that get hoodwinked. There are a lot of places where people can learn Hebrew. That's one of the classes I don't teach, but people have to be careful because who's teaching Hebrew? A lot of these videos, Messianics, right? So, you got to be careful. They may be well-meaning, but they have an agenda also. They have a tremendous agenda also. So, yeah, like I said, I gave someone a golden opportunity, to show credentials. Gave a few people golden opportunity. And, I near anything, nothing. I got made fun of. Okay. I got big shoulders. That's fine. But at the end of the day, it's put up or shut up. But don't think no one's going to call you out if you say something egregious, right? That's, that's for sure. But, the thing is that, you get a little bit of knowledge of people already posting, people saying this, people saying that, saying the other thing. It's one thing you post what someone else says. Okay. If they're legit, good. If not, okay, it's a problem. But in general, you got to be very careful. Like I called this person out, mentioned before. I understood what they said, but if they would have lived in the Jewish community, they wouldn't have said it. They wouldn't have made such a statement. They read it. That's very good. So, they get credit for reading something, giving over some Torah, but they didn't understand the context. If you don't understand the context, why are you quoting it? And why are you saying it? Right. And to me, it just burns me up because, you got better things to do. You should be learning from other people, not giving classes yourself. Right. If you have the requisite knowledge, fine. But a lot of these people don't. And they say crazy things and they, whatever. Anyway, I'm gonna stop there. I do this every Sunday, 9 o'clock Eastern time, 4 o'clock Israel time. I should be doing Tanakh talk in about an hour, a little less than an hour. I haven't found out yet, but we'll see. And then 2:30 Eastern time, 9:30 Israel time. We're going to be doing the no-hide laws. I don't think people want to miss this one because we're going to hammer a lot of things. Should be fun. And even if you don't make it, it'll be on No Hide Nation's website. You go to nohidenation.com. It should be up there as well. Otherwise, anyone wants to contact me, find me at Michael Chaim Kaufman on Facebook or Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. Send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBIChaimCoffman @gmail.com. Wish everyone a good